share your actual opinion and clarify your belief.
Yeah, I usually just play piano when I talk. Like even like the people that I work with and stuff, like I just like play piano on like business calls and stuff, just because it's kind of like my like, I don't know. I think I can like think and like communicate better if I'm like playing usually, or at least producing like sound.
Yeah. I think if people don't know you're doing that or why, it actually sounds super belittling. Because if I was having a difficult conversation with you and you just started playing music, it's almost like someone going la 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 in the middle of me talking. I'm like,
yeah,
is something wrong with you?
No, I can hear exactly what you're saying, and I can like communicate. Like, in fact, the more I communicate while I play, the faster and more accurate I can play. I actually just can't play fast when I'm not stimulated, because when I'm not stimulated, then I can't play very fast. So the more stimulated I get, the faster I can play. That's why like I usually have like two streams going on, and I'm not really listening to them, and they're creating cacophony. And then I'll sometimes even play music in the background, and then I'll like work on like really detailed intonation stuff, because the more stuff I can ignore, the more I can like focus.
Yeah. I know you're a music nerd, but do you like actually produce music, make music?
Can I plug my stuff? Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it. I don't care.
Yeah, so for a
Does
long
it sound
time
like
I wasn't...
anime music or some shit? I feel like I've heard this in a Persona game.
Yeah, so for a long time I wasn't really focusing on my music, because my other like YouTube stuff was like was kind of taking my focus. But yeah, I release music. I have a YouTube channel for music, and I just made a music Patreon. So if you want to join my music community or support the work that I do, you can check it out on patreon.com/Ziana. Exactly what you see on the screen in the top left corner. Basically, I do a lot of stuff with like microtonal harmony and really just music philosophy and harmony, intonation, musicology, and all sorts of things. And I'm always just teaching composition. So I create a space to where I can teach music and just share my music and stuff. So, and then my YouTube channel. And I've done some, if you've ever played the video game Scrap Mechanic, I did the soundtrack for that game. So that was a game that I did. Did you ever play that game?
Nah. I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not like a music nerd in that sense. So like when people talk about music theory, I don't be giving a shit like that. But whatever you're playing right now sounds good. So
well, that's definitely the thing for me. Yeah, I mean, I just like play from the soul, you know. But I just know, for me, like theory is more of like it's an external language, but the important thing is the internal experience of it. So if you don't hear it, you don't move with it, you don't vibe with it and groove on it, it doesn't really mean anything, you know. There's no point in having a map if you are never going to go to the territory, I guess, you know?
I'm telling you, man, I feel like I'm in a Japanese RPG walking into an internet cafe to talk to an NPC right now.
Yeah, so if anyone out there wants to learn how to be better at music, unironically, I've taught lots and lots of people, and it's what I've done my whole life. And then I started teaching people how to, you know, feminize their voice. And I kind of
how to feminize?
Yeah, because you know I'm male and everything, right? So.
Have you ever thought of doing a collaboration with Destiny? I feel like DGG would buy the music.
I would love to. Actually, you know, I made a comment to Destiny just the other day, I think in chat. Next time he comes to LA, he should come over. We should do a studio stream. We can produce a single or something like that on stream. That'd be fun.
Yeah. Destiny, would you do that? If DDG said they would be interested in something like that?
Yeah, I'll be in LA at the end of this month, so I might, because I think I've got some free days towards the end.
I'm definitely down. It'll be a fun stream. I just got a producer as well that I've been working with who's been helping me like set video stuff up and shit, so we could pretty much just have it all set up to just, you know, go. We could probably do some like multi-camera angle shit too.
Yeah, Destiny, if you had to be like a hyper music critic, let's say you're Simon Cowell on The Voice or whatever fucking show you did, and you heard her playing, what'd you do? Is she getting the green light or are you buzzing her out?
Jesus, I don't know, dude. Why would you put me on the spotlight? Obviously, Greenlighter is the best stuff I've ever heard in my entire life. Wait, why would you ask me? Why would you ask me that question?
What do you mean? I think it's perfectly fine. I think as someone who takes music seriously, would you be deeply upset if Destiny said he wouldn't give you a green light?
It's, well, right now she's just like, now she's playing like
No.
random stuff. If she was doing like a prepared piece, I imagine also if she's going on a talent show, you're probably going to be using like the microtonal board and shit, right? And you're going to compose like a piece that is outside of the tonal vocabulary that most people are used to. And then, you probably get okay on it.
Yeah, well, I just kind of vibe, whatever I'm playing. I don't know. If I were to go onto a talent show and I would actually try to like do something like a pop thing, no, I would probably do like a really like accessible like soul version of like a modern pop tune, I'd probably do something like that. I'd probably keep it in 12 too if I actually wanted to win like the competition.
Oh, you think so?
Because just because you want to keep it accessible.
Yeah, I feel like the only
And you're
problem
gonna
though
be
is
judged by
that
the
if you
listener.
rely on accessibility instead of gimmick,
True.
not to-
Well, that's
I'm
the
not-
thing. I don't use tonality as a gimmick.
No,
so
well, when
that's
you
kind
know
of
what I mean.
the
When I say gimmick, I mean like something that people
like a
aren't
shock
used
factor.
to. Yeah, exactly.
I got you.
The shock value would be really good, but if you're gonna go for conventional, you're gonna be up against like every single like super conventional singer, and then like the talent pool is way deeper and way more
Yeah,
difficult. Whereas if you do something kind of
definitely
gimmicky,
agree with that.
you're gonna be
Yeah,
the
I
only
agree with
person that
in your sort of talent. Yeah, totally. That makes sense.
You guys
Yeah,
realize?
no, I wouldn't be offended at all. It'd be cool. I don't even know what we'd produce. Maybe like, it'd be funny like if maybe chat voted if we did like a hyper pop tune versus like a jazz thing versus like, I don't know. With chat could figure out some like vote for a style or something and we can just go off on it.
I'm telling you, man, Chat are a bunch of fucking Persona nerds. They would like that kind of.
That'd be cool. Actually, I know a person who did who did an awesome jazz cover of the Persona soundtrack. You should check that out. Pat Bartley. Actually, he was someone who critiqued Destiny when he made his jazz claim back in January. But
Bass.
he's a great sax player. Shout out to him.
Sometimes I'll be watching Destiny and like he'll remind me how hateable he is,
Thanks.
and then all of a sudden he'll play music, and then I'm like, oh, he's a real person again. I don't know what it is, but it's
Yeah.
actually interesting how you can like detect somebody, and then you just hear them do something artistic. You're like, oh yeah, this is like a multifaceted human being.
I think I brought that up before on like a lot of the Red Pill shows I go on. It's one of the things that triggers me is when they talk about like getting girls ultra masculine, and it's like if you can get like an instrument in front of somebody, that's like a surefire way to get somebody to like you. And then also like liking their animals and kids and shit is like a surefire way to get. It's always funny that like those are like the go-tos. Not to say that being masculine doesn't work, but those are like highly effective. But they're probably seen as more feminine than anything else.
You said they're seen as more feminine than anything else?
Yeah, when you think of like a guy like playing piano or something over like, like lifting weights or something, I think that red pillars would be, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, those people are so like deluded when it comes to reality.
Yeah, I know.
Just guy plays music like, yo, you know how many fucking band members you be getting all the pussy, like, bro?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
It was actually so disgusting as a dancer seeing how much pussy people who did music would get. Like, not every kind of music, obviously, but like I remember dudes in like just cover bands. They'd go to like concerts, they do like, these little shows at dingy bars, and they'd be like cleaning up. I'm like, bro, this dude is not even like an FT or anything, like in terms of skill level.
Sure.
And he cleaning up. So whenever I see dudes be like, "Oh, this shit's gay," I'm like, "All right."
Yeah.
I feel like music is like one of the oldest things that humans have, and it's one of the most incredible experiences that we can all share with. So I don't know, I think everyone should be musical, and I think everyone should play music or try to express music. I think we all express music, but just in contained ways that we're like typically allowed to express. No, I mean like speech is kind of an expression of music in a way, but in a contained way that we're comfortable. Because once you like learn how to do it, music, like I'm not like thinking about anything I'm playing or whatever. I'm just kind of moving my hands around and stuff. So, and I think it's the same when we talk, right? It just becomes sort of a passive auditory action, and music's kind of like that. So.
I find earlier you were talking about like doing the organization for the talent show or whatever. I noticed this by going to a couple of like improv sessions when it comes to music. I noticed there's some guys or some women who, when they perform, they sound really good when they're improvising, but every time they got to choose a set of chords or they got to make a selection for a song, everything just sounds so dog shit once it's like actually pre-prepared. Maybe it's because they
Oh,
don't.
it's actually-
I'm not good at performing live. I'm good at improvising. I'm good at composing, hearing, and arranging, and I can learn stuff. But I've never been a person that can focus to learn other people's music. Shit's just like boring as fuck, honestly.
I guarantee you, Abba, I bet it works this way in the comedy world. There's got to be some comedians that they have like the funniest fucking sets ever.
Crowd work? Yeah.
Yeah, but when it comes to like actually just kind of like being really funny in real life, like it's just not the same thing. When it comes to music, preparation of music and improv are two totally different things. Like if you put me in a room with a bunch of normal people and I'm allowed to just like mess around on the piano, I can probably convince most people that I'm like pretty good at piano. But if you get me to like prepare pieces, it's gonna be like, oh, this guy's like a third grader. They're two totally different. And also, I've known friends that are, and I'm sure Xena, I don't know actually pronounce her name, Ziana, whatever the fuck.
Ziana.
You probably
My name's
know.
Amelia.
Sure. You probably
It's
know
like a
people that are
Destiny's
really, really, really good classically trained pianists that like
Yeah.
couldn't play like a grade 12, like a high school fucking level like jazz band piece, because they can't
that
like
was the
syncopate,
argument.
you know?
That was the argument I made to you in January, and you were trying to deny it. That exact argument. Sorry to call you out on that, but about how even the great classical pianists couldn't just learn the syncopation or the swing or the jazz, right? It's gotta be heard. So just gotta call you out on that one.
Yeah, firstly, no, that wasn't the argument I was making. They have the capability to learn it because there are pianists like Keith Jarrett, for instance, that do
I know.
classical
Well,
and jazz
he's at a
really
different
well.
level. I mean,
Sure,
Keith
I know, but I'm saying,
Jarrett's
hold
one of
on,
the
well,
greatest of all
no, because
time.
if you're gonna
He's
call me
the
out,
GOAT.
I'm gonna counter call you out. There are pianists that can
Right.
do classical
Don't
and
let
jazz.
him get
But
away with
all
it.
I'm saying,
Don't let him be weak.
yeah, I know. All I'm saying is that they're two very, very different sets of skills, and if you don't practice one,
Totally.
you can't just pick it up from the other.
It's just like in the gym, like where there's like divergent specialization. You know, it's hard to be like elite, top of the world, specialized in multiple different domains at the same time, because you sort of get specialized over time at one. So I think like with the Keith Jarrett thing, I think, you know, he obviously got started classical and then he moved into jazz. So I think it's less like you can it's less like you can hybrid specialize and become the world's greatest at two things, and more like to become the world's greatest at one thing, you have to allow that specialization to weaken in others, but then look around those boundaries to gain strength in other domains and stuff. But yeah, I agree with you. That's a good point, Pierce. But Keith Jarrett's the GOAT. He's crazy. Do you have a favorite chord?
What did you say?
What did she say? Did she have her favorite what?
Favorite chord?
Oh. There you go.
Wait, what did you hear?
I thought out of nowhere she's like, "Do you have a favorite porn?" I was like, "Whoa,
No.
that's wild."
What? That's weird.
I would have wanted to know what the answer was too, because I'm like, who has a favorite porn? But anyways, carry on.
Wait, you've never had a favorite porn?
I've never had a favorite porn. Everything gets rotated. I think if you watch the same porn for too long, that's really weird.
Interesting.
I feel like porn is meant to be rotated, is it not?
Maybe. I feel like
Anybody just watches the same fucking DVD forever.
I feel like there are some times where no, I cast the wrong spell. Sorry. I feel like there are some times where you can find a porn and you like it a lot and you rewatch it for a few days. But yeah, they get old, obviously.
Yeah, I agree. You can definitely do a couple days, but after a while, it's gotta go.
Sure.
I don't think I've ever had a porno that I could watch for more than like a couple months, or even that's even pushing it. And then, like, you know, I might come back to it a little bit, like for one last fling or a few more, but after that, it gotta go away.
Yeah, that's fair.
I want to meet the man who could rewatch the same porn forever. That's great. Yeah. Anyways.
I didn't need to be here.
So yeah, did you have a favorite chord?
I like chords with lots of extensions, basically. I'm a simple man. So your major sevens, your add 11s, like those things.
What's the biggest extension you know?
Well, I mean, I guess you can just start stacking chords on top of each other if you want to be gay about it. I don't know.
I just wonder.
But the problem is, like, when you ask me that, I can play lots of them, but I can't voice them correctly, right? Because on piano, if you're stacking thirds all the way up to like 15, it's gonna sound like shit, right? So I don't know any of like the proper, because they're gonna be, right? There's conventional voicings for
Well,
your add nines.
I'll teach you something if you're open to something, just a quick advice, and this goes for everybody, and it's really a property of sound that we can't really avoid. Voicing always happens against an unrealized harmonic series in the background. So let's say you play a tone anywhere in the spectrum. Now there is some theoretical harmonic series going on in the background. It can be from that tone, or you can impose that tone to be some theoretical point in a harmonic series. So if I were to do that, and I wanted this to be a third, that's going to be the most concordant and most like empty or clearest version. It's not that clear in 12 actually, because of the way 12 is tuned. But we can start to space around the overtone series. You can't get all the overtones on the piano, but this is why if you space thirds in the bass, it's muddy, because low frequency spaces down there we hear very non-linearly, and so if we have anything too narrow in that lower area, it gets too muddy. If we have anything we can't have anything too close in the top. You can play entire clusters of notes in the top and it fuses because of the way we hear and the way the human auditory system works. And since the actual like pressure in the space and like the way, well, the most concordant arrangement of tones that can ever physically exist in this universe that we're aware of is a harmonic series or reductions of that or subsets of it. So it is basically the standard, it's like the blueprint of what concordance and that doesn't mean consonance and dissonance, by the way, for anyone who's listening who's not really aware of that. Consonance and dissonance is a bit more contextual. Concordance is more about the physical like clarity and roughness of like the actual like vibration in the space. And so yeah, so when we think about spacing, just so you're aware, in jazz principles what we tend to think is where there's the D3, you basically don't ever want to put a voiceless root below there. So most like jazz piano, we voice rootlessly, and we pretty much don't go down there. If we do go down there, it's usually not thirds, because even a minor third, C, E flat, B flat, gets a little muddy at that point in the frequency spectrum with that spacing. So, but yet D minor, it's quite clear to the ear. So then if I were to go to C minor, I don't really want to play it with a C and E flat. I want to keep the fourth. The texture is going to stay open. And then now I can open octaves in the bottom. And then in the top, it doesn't even matter what you do. It doesn't even matter because of the way harmonic spacing and concordance works. So yeah, anyways, that's how. So just, you want to have ranges of fourths, thirds, and seconds in the middle of the piano. You can have anything in the top end. When you have wide structures, it makes the thing feel open. And then on the low end, unless you want rumbling effects, you should keep your spacings wide, either root and 5, root octave, or root major 6. Like this is a beautiful one that most people don't know. Holy fuck, I'm actually going to use this later. Like I said, subscribe to my Patreon. I can teach you more about music than anyone you've ever met, probably. So come find out. Woohoo! You know, I'm trying to make music my life and my living because I love what I do already, but my dream is to just focus on my music entirely because I know that's what I want for my life. And so, yeah, I can teach you anything you want to know about music.
Somebody in chat said explain for us. Basically, the music, there's like 1 or 2 patterns you need to learn in music, and it essentially repeats like in every single space. And I think the more you learn in music, the more you realize like how fundamental everything kind of goes back to. So like say like the harmonic series, or like the circle of fourths or fifths, and even how you voice things. Like in some sense, it can seem very complicated. A lot of what I'm saying, maybe not understand, but like it seems like very complicated how things are written. But the reality is the way that sound works, it like all kind of rolls into itself. It's kind of weird, but even though music is like the things that sound beautiful or pretty to the ear, a lot of it is like, you could argue, is very heavily math based. When you dig into like the physics of all the sound or whatever, it's like the simplest explanation I can think of.
I would say, yeah, that's a pretty decent. I mean, it's more so. The only reason why any of these principles function the way they do is the way. Well, for one, the human ear and like auditory system has a lot of weird properties, so it's really not just math based. Like math provides a pretty useful map, but like that's like a map, not the territory once again. So it ultimately is about sound because your ability to interact and manipulate it is an internal process. But I do agree with like the behavior.
Sure, but when you talk about, like, for instance, like harmonic series, and you talk about voicing
Yeah.
around harmonic series, like all of this is like ratios of frequencies that are like pretty restrictive in terms of how they can show up. But I mean, you have a lot of freedom with how you, yeah.
Generally, but there's a lot of not so much, like 12 note equal temperament really shows that, right? So music can kind of just be whatever. It doesn't have to conform to any whatever. And even not just that, but even going off of that map, you can find interesting pools of concordance that come from other types of arrangements, like linear, like arithmetic, like frequency structure stuff and whatnot. But yeah, the main thing is that basically for some reason, I'll spare all the details, but when we produce a stable tone, like what our ears perceive as a pitch, that creates a certain pattern in the space around us. And that pattern actually is not just one single pitch. Like most people, when they hear that one tone, it's just one sound. But inside of that sound, there's all these other little pitches that are sounding at the same time. And those basically are the unit of like concord. And so every time we voice, we're ultimately voicing against that structure. And beautiful color comes from deviating from it and sort of obscuring it and working around it. So yeah. Whatcha? You dance, right?
You're talking to ABBA, yes.
That's right.
Got you into that.
But I don't know any theory, so if you start asking me like B minors and all these other chords, I'd be like, bro, I just be moving. I could probably get technical, like, you know, for if I really tried, but I don't have the lingo. I don't have the academia either for it. This is a bit more of a scientific question, but you probably still answer in layman terms. When it comes to the relationship between music and emotions, I'm curious, what have you guys read up on scientifically that kind of explains away these things? Is it just all brain waves and the way our brains react to stuff, or is there like even deeper things going on? Because I've heard of so many things in relation to like mothers being pregnant and listening to certain kind of musics and different things like that. I'm just curious what you guys know if there's anything scientific behind it.
You want to get that, Destiny? Yeah.
Sure, I'm gonna take a stab at it. So there are some things that are just gonna be like objectively true things, and then there are gonna be some things that are gonna be culturally influenced things. So like for instance, certain notes, do you know like when you draw like a little wave, like on a graph, it goes like up and down and up and down? And
Sure.
then you can draw a wave that's like twice as fast, so it'll go up and down like twice as quickly, right? You could describe like the ratio between those pitches as like 1 to 2, right? There are going to be certain ratios of pitches that sound like nicer to the ear. So we can call those like consonant pitches. So for instance, on a keyboard, like C and G, right? Like these things they sound like kind of nice because they don't vibrate a lot against each other. But if you do like C and like F sharp, they have a lot of like dissonance with each other. They vibrate a lot against each other, right? So in some sense, some music is going to be like those things tend to sound a certain way, and consonant things tend to sound another way, right? Some things sound like nice because they don't create those unpleasant vibrations. Some things sound really bad because they do create bad vibrations.
Okay.
However, there's a lot of stuff that's like cultural, like how you hear a tone can influence too. So for instance, like that's like a really bad sound, like C and B natural, but arguably it can show up in ways where it's like, oh, it doesn't sound as bad. So there are some principles of sound that they sound away because of how the notes like vibrate against each other. But then in other ways, based on like the context that we hear certain songs, they can make us feel a certain way. Now, whether or not there's like an objective, like, does all music make us feel this way? I don't know if there's a concrete answer on it. People argue this question all the time. One of the most legendary ways that these arguments show up is what makes a song a Christmas song. And some people will get very hard into the theory of like certain chord progressions are this is Christmas and blah, 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 blah. And other people will say if there's fucking sleigh bells in the song, it's gonna sound Christmassy. And I don't even know if people agree on that argument 100%. So yeah, music is like it's a very complicated phenomenon that probably is gonna require some like compelling answer about like what does it mean to be conscious to have like a good accounting for it. But yeah, that's as much as I think I could explain, yeah.
I think in similar fashion to food, like we can't all agree on what would constitute good food, but we do see patterns and overarching things that are popular in terms of flavor palettes and things like that.
Yeah.
So I imagine it would probably work similar.
Okay, so my thoughts on this. I think that really music is a tricky thing for us to pin down, and when we start to talk in philosophical discussions about it, it tends to get to this weird place where it breaks down because of the whole observer kind of paradox. You know, if someone like hears silence, is that music? And someone says, I think it is, and someone says, I don't think it is, right? It falls into a really weird place. And the way I've come to understand it over time is that music is not actually like a material or substance. It's a process or a state transition between something external sort of entering internal and then being reprocessed, or something internal being reprocessed and going external. And there's kind of three parties involved all the time, which is the person making the music, the external thing itself, like the medium itself, which is the thing that has objective form and objective qualities in it, and then the like internal like experience of the person who perceives it. So for example, a lot of people can have really moving experiences just listening to noise or like, you know, screaming stuff that other people don't find beautiful. And I think in that case, that's because like music is an internal process. It's not really something that is an objective process. And when we think like about what Destiny was talking about with the concordance and discordance stuff, that is objective. There is an empirical and observable, measurable behavior of how waves and signals combine and interact in space. And the issue with that argument and using that argument to derive like appeal to aesthetic beauty is those acoustic principles that we have, they're not really represented in a lot of our pop music. I mean, they are in terms of how mixes are produced in general, but you know, like Equal Temperament alone shows that if really the key thing was this like purity of like of intervallic structure and stuff, and an appeal to like sort of a that more objective concord, then we probably wouldn't have settled in where we had. I mean, if we look at any objective ideals or objective appeals to beauty, there are some trends that show up in human history, and those are notes with scales with 7 notes, scales with 5 notes, both heptatonic and equipentatonic scales, which just means 5 and 7, and then also just intonation and harmonic series tunings, because the human voice itself is fundamentally a harmonic series. And so when you get a bunch of people together singing in a room, they tend to start tuning harmonically, and that tends to show up around pretty much all cultures in some capacity. And then from there, the question is, once you have that harmonic series tuning that everyone's singing, how do you modulate? How do you get it on a physical instrument, since it's a really complex structure? So I don't really think there's an objective beauty or emotion to music. Yeah, I don't think so. I think a lot of it has to do with your environment, cultural, because your experience, you kind of project what you want into music. So like when people hear microtonal music, if they grew up in an area that uses those kinds of microtones, those will just sound like regular sounds that are really normal. And then when someone hears something maybe that's not in 12, that can kind of sound out of tune or broken, and that there's a name for that in the microtonal community. It's called like Zen harmonic or whatever. So like the more Zen it is the less like familiar it sounds to your ear, and that can go away. So if you spend like 3 weeks in like a slightly different tuning or something, and then you come back and you play a different one, it completely changes the way that it affects you. And so I think yeah, I don't know about that. The problem is there's the internal process for music. So yeah, there's objective external, but that's very little about what makes like art compelling or engaging for people to interact with. like Bill Evans? That's a great question. I spent a long time studying and transcribing Bill Evans in my younger days. You're gonna want to learn to put the 9 next to the minor third. There you go. And then you're gonna want to play all your altered dominants as 2 forms. That form, which is the 3/7 sharp 9 form, or the other form. Basically, he had a bunch of pinched seconds constantly in the mid range. Also, he had these really interesting chordal minor type beats, you know, because he's the so what. He's the one who played those chords. But you're gonna want to get the and then the altered voicing, which is that one, like I said. You're gonna want the diminished, where instead of playing root minor third flat 5 flat 7, you're just gonna want to play 11 flat 5 flat 7 like that. It's weird for a diminished voicing, but with a bass it sounds like.
Yo, Destiny,
What's up?
you ever just listen to people and realize they have like no idea how to market themselves?
Realize you have no what?
They have no idea how to market themselves.
No idea how to what themselves?
Market.
Oh, yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Zerk is a good example of that.
I'm not trying to market myself.
No.
Yes, I am.
But I know you're not. I know you're not.
No. I am now though. For music, I am now. Only in the last 2 weeks though. Otherwise, I've been.
Wait. Was this about her?
No. It wasn't about her. I don't think she's trying to market herself.
I am now though. In the last like 2 weeks, but yeah.
Oh wait, what is this in reference to, or what's the inspiration for that?
No, it's just sometimes I see content creators, or like I'll see people online who I think like are skilled or talented at something, and I'm just like, these people have like simple ability to like, which is nothing bad. Like they have a talent or skill, they just have no idea how to get it out to the people, get it out to the people in a way that they would find interesting. Right? And so I don't know if I'm too content brained or if I'm always like thinking about how to be efficient with things. I don't even feel like I'm that talented. I just think I have better processes when it comes to like marketing whatever I want to do, packaging in a way that's like suitable for people. But I think it's just true for most successful products. I think most successful products are not the most quality products out there. They're just the best at getting what the consumer wants in them.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, for sure.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was kind of wondering if I could pick the brain of the 2 music experts in the room. I don't want to leave you out, Abba, but I'm not entirely sure if you have a background in the music like this.
No. If you guys want to talk about chords and E minors and L flats or whatever the fuck it is, then go ahead.
No, mate, it's a really simple, stupid question. I listen to a lot of music, but it's not the usual kind of music. The music I listen to has a lot of comedy in it. It's not like Stephen Lynch or a comedy musician, but it's more like Weird Al Yankovic, Bloodhound Gang, Lonely Island, stuff like that. Destiny, Ziana? How do you say your name?
Ziana, yeah.
Okay, cool. Do y'all consider that like actual real music?
I think if you talk to anybody that does music, then they should never give you an answer where they're like, oh, this is real music and this isn't, because the territory is very fraught with arguments. That's like an impossible to answer. Like theoretically, there's a really pretentious fuck. I shouldn't say that. But there's a guy called John Cage who has like 1 billion different experimental albums of like recording a bird in a cage for an hour and just like recording random shit and like trying to challenge like what is music. As long as there's some intentionality and some organization, then yeah, you can probably call it music. But like people will even challenge those 2 parts of it. So
Yeah, I would say if I hear it as music, I will experience it as music. I've certainly been brought to tears by the sound of an air conditioner before, so.
Shut the fuck up.
No,
Shut the fuck up.
I'm serious. I have like a 15-minute recording on my phone from last August. There was these people working on construction near my friend's house, and they had these air compressors or something, and it was just blaring away super loud, and I went out at like 9 in the morning, and there was there was a prominent 13th harmonic, and I almost never hear prominent 13th harmonics in like acoustic sources. It's extremely rare, and I was just like, it was really stunning, so I just kind of fucking jammed out to it for a while. So I don't know, I think I'm probably one of the most liberal people when it comes to the definition of what is music. Then again, I do think there needs to be some intention in it, but I think the listener can put intention into it, which is what I said earlier about the person hearing it can project onto it. So that's why, like, me hearing that can move me because that's what I'm hearing in it, and so it sort of becomes and transcends into music in that state transition process inside me when I experience that. But no, I certainly think there's objective. I think there's objective principles that tend to make an artist a stronger composer, weaker composer, or a piece more, consumable or less. But I don't think that necessarily makes it more or less music if I can consume it.
Well, I guess I should narrow it down a little bit. If the subject matter of the song is intended to be funny, rather than expressing the artistic beauty of the song itself, does that make it less, less acceptable as music?
No, I mean, music
No,
can
I'm
be
pretty
funny,
sure.
right? Movies can be funny, film can be funny, like anything can be funny. Paintings can be funny. Like, there's even a classical piece of is it
Mozart. That's who I was trying to think of too.
We-
It's Mozart, right?
Are you
Like
the?
art noise?
Oh, I wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking of is it Haydn? Is that how you pronounce his name? It's been so long. He has the thing called the Surprise Symphony. I'm sure you've heard this, yeah? Where it's like the whole symphony is like they're playing along, they're quiet, and there's just like one really fucking loud note, and it's supposed to, I don't know if it was supposed to scare the audience or what, but I'm like, yeah, I mean, like, they're like, comedy can show up in all sorts of things. It doesn't make it less artistic, I don't think.
Yeah, it's supposed to sound like a mistake, and then like I feel comedy is still a reaction, and I feel like that kind of creates that state transition process I was talking about, where like the sound, the external is consumed, and it's like synthesized and processed into some like significant reaction. So if it makes you laugh, then I think like it really obviously moved you. Not a lot of things make me actually laugh. So when I hear music that does do that, it's like pretty impressive.
Okay, well, that was my question. Give me something to think about. Y'all have a good night.
I love you. Be careful, buddy.
When I was younger, I used to think comedy pieces or like meme pieces were like, I don't know, less, but I feel like I really moved on from that perspective. It just doesn't really make any sense. I think I was just envious of people who were doing that with their music and succeeding.
Sure, I think there's always like the temptation. It feels good to be able to rigidly define something and then to draw borders around like what is art or what isn't art or stuff like that, right? If you can do it, it feels good to be able to do it. But then, I mean, any position you have is going to get challenged eventually, and it's hard for it to stand up to all forms of criticism when you start drawing like boundaries around like what is music and what isn't. And
Yeah, and I think because it's not really like I think when you try to define, like I wrote some essay on this recently, I'm going to eventually publish, but I think like the challenge is when you try to point to it and define like a specific quality that it has or doesn't have, it kind of misses the fact, like I was saying, that like it's actually the transmission process or like the boundary conversion process between that external thing being reprocessed internally and synthesized and then or put back out by an artist. Because like the question of like, is it music? Well, would it be music if someone couldn't hear and couldn't feel but had a piano in front of them, was able to mash away at it, and they were intending to create something and they knew that's what they were trying to do? I personally would argue yes, definitely. But in that case, there's nothing really feedback from the artist, but there's still intention being put out into the external. So there's still some conversion of that boundary transition thing. And then really, yeah. So I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot, just different scenarios and cases that sort of put that question of what is music to its limit. And I think the way to define music is to define it as a dynamic process, the conversion process, as opposed to a fixed point. Because if it's right on the periphery of boundaries, it's not really like in either space, and that's, I think, what makes it special. But yeah, thanks for letting me play. It was fun. Hit me up for something if you're in LA. I'm definitely down to jam or something if you want to figure that out. And thanks for listening, Abba, as well.
Yeah. I would tell you to, if you want to actually make money from music and you don't,
I do.
maybe you just want to work with like aspiring musicians or whatever.
Well, no, I want to do what I want to do. That's kind of the thing. I just want to do.
What do you want to do?
I want to teach and pioneer the craziest music theory and music philosophy that exists, which is pretty much what I've been doing, but get paid for it, which is a pretty hard task because I don't really know any music theorist that's, done that. But I'm starting to get to a point where I'm getting closer to that. I'm down to produce for people too, but I already have a job and some business stuff, and it's okay, and it's pretty hard for me to put time away from that. So my music has to sort of buy back my time in a way, if that makes sense. So I don't know. I want to make more music education resources. I want to make more like entertaining stuff. I started making short form content for the first time in my life. I've always made like long form content, like 20-minute, like 30-minute, 40-minute videos and stuff. So I started making these 1-minute long piano etudes in 31, and that really helped my music channel out a lot. I've had the most growth in the last months that I've ever had, so that's kind of made me think more about sharing what I do more publicly. So yeah, that's why I'm here. Like, I was like, hey, can I play piano? You know. But no, if you have any suggestions or
No. I think if
advice,
that's what you want to do, which I think is like not necessarily about maximizing revenue, but it's more so about more the scholarly pursuit and like the craft
well,
itself.
music
And I
for
think-
me is a spiritual pursuit. So
Yeah,
I'm
for sure.
very thankful that people enjoy what I do.
Yeah. No, I respect it. I think in a lot of disciplines, that kind of approach or more of a purist or experimental mindset is great, even if it doesn't necessarily always lead to the
But,
highest
hey,
return. I think it's still
But
dope.
but if you ever need a producer for some meme tracks on your channel, and you want to collaborate or you want to do some work, I'm definitely down.
Or listen, if you start producing some salsa songs, you can holla at me.
Yo, what's up? I fuck with that. But no, yeah, that's right. So chat, Patreon. I'll post my links in chat. That's right, Highland and Type or whatever.
I did
Yeah, and
it.
if anyone knows any good cello teachers in LA, let me know too. I've been playing cello for a bit, but I really want a teacher so I can like get like better, because I'm having trouble bowing. I haven't quite figured out. There's my Patreon channel. I just posted that. And like I said, that's just for my music YouTube stuff and just my old stuff. I'll have my discography on there and my rare tracks. I've written like 10 albums. I have like thousands of tracks that I've never released. So I'm slowly like releasing those things in different eras of my journey. And
Have you
I'm
ever
putting out a
do you know who
new
Zane
jazz
is on
record.
Twitch?
Zane,
Guitar player guy, he's super talented.
I don't. Do you know him?
Kind of, yeah. Oof, that would be fun. He's also like very, very, very theory oriented. He's got a big
Yeah,
brain
it'd be
for
fun to
it.
talk with him. I would definitely be down to chat if you want to connect him and I or whatever. But yeah. I don't know. Have you been playing recently?
I've just been streaming. Nothing that I haven't normally been doing. So. Okay.
Do you know Barry Harris?
Nope.
You should study some Barry Harris sometime. I think that would be a useful
Destiny's
thing
got
for
a
you.
lot of free time.
Yeah, I'm all over it.
True. Fair, I see what you mean. Yeah, that's the hard thing is, when do you have time to do music? Not you, but the general you. I just kind of like, I don't know. I didn't care what kind of happened to me when I was younger, so I just was like, I'm gonna do music no matter what happens to me. And then at some point, I moved away from that, but
Hey, listen, do you want DGG to hate you? Do you think they want this guy spending all of his free time doing that? They want to see him do debate crap? They want to see him change his
I
mind?
kind of want to see that too. Yeah, I kind of want to see that too, though. Get to it.
Yeah,
Get out there on
You
those
doing all this
campuses.
music talk, trying to tell him to go find his
fuck
passion.
music.
Other
Wait, fuck
people wanna
music.
be
Yeah,
entertained.
you should never touch your piano again.
That's right. I'm trying to
Get off
save you
that.
from being murdered by DDG, okay? So,
Yeah. I see. True. Okay, I'm gonna hop off here. I got some other stuff I gotta do. It was lovely chatting, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening. Thanks for having me on, and yeah, I'll chat soon.
Yeah, be
Take care.
careful.
Thank you. Bye. Take care. Have a great night, Abba.
good night.
Fucking ABBA. Oh fuck, did he leave? Okay, well. And he misses. The trans athlete
Hello and welcome. This is Art Cafe, episode 141. Please welcome my next guest, Sava Zivkovic. Sava is a Belgrade-based film and animation director. His work include known cinematics such as Diablo Immortal, Dead Island 2, and Huxley. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Let's go! We were just actually talking about this. I just cannot believe how time is flying. And most importantly, how many things have changed since we met in person, because you came down to California and
Yeah.
we hung out with John.
Where are we?
Paris, 2010 AD, and this is the mighty Musée d'Orsay, home to many of the greatest paintings in history.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Ignore that, I've got something more important to show you.
Take all your chances while you can. Never know when they'll pass you by. Like a sum the mathematician cannot solve. Like me, trying my hardest to explain. It's all about your crossing kisses. Those first steps there, I can't calculate.
To Black. We met a few days ago. I asked you about the church at Verse.
Oh, yes. Glad to be of help. You were nice about my tie.
Yes, and today is another cracker, if I may say so. But I just wondered, between you and me, in 100 words, where do you think Van Gogh rates in the history of art?
Well, big question. But to me, Van Gogh is the finest painter of them all. Certainly the most popular great painter of all time. The most beloved. His command of color, the most magnificent. He transformed the pain of his tormented life into ecstatic beauty. Pain is easy to portray, but to use your passion and pain to portray the ecstasy and joy and magnificence of our world, no one had ever done it before. Perhaps no one ever will again. To my mind, that strange, wild man who roamed the fields of Provence was not only the world's greatest artist, but also one of the greatest men who ever lived.
Vincent, sorry. I'm sorry, is it too much?
No. They are tears of joy. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Sorry about the beard.
It's all about you.
don't like sunflowers.
No, it's not that I don't like them. I find them complex. Always somewhere between living and dying. Half human as they turn to the sun. A little disgusting. But you know, they are a challenge.
And what I'm pretty sure you're right, Stu. But, moving on. There's something I need to show you.
That's him. And the eyes. Without mercy.
This is a creature called the Crephaeus. They travel in space. They travel as a pack, scavenging across the universe. And sometimes one of them gets left behind, and because they are a brutal race, the others never come back. So, dotted all around the universe are individual, utterly merciless, utterly abandoned Crephaeus. And what they do is, well, kill until they're killed, which they usually aren't because other creatures can't see them.
But I can.
Yes, and that's why we're in a unique position today, my friend, to end this reign of terror. So, feeling like painting the church today.
What about the monster?
Take my word for it, if you paint it, he will come.
Okay, I'll get my things.
In your own time. Then I promise you we'll be out of your hair by this time tomorrow. This is risky.
Riskier than normal?
Well, think about it. This is the middle of Vincent van Gogh's greatest year of painting. If we're not careful, the net result of our pleasant little trip will be the brutal murder of the greatest artist who ever lived. Half the pictures on the wall of the Musée d'Orsay will disappear. And it will be our fault.
Vincent?
Vincent? Vincent, can I help?
It's so clear you cannot help. And when you leave, and everyone always leaves, I will be left once more with an empty heart and no hope.
My experience is that there is, you know, surprisingly always hope.
Then your experience is incomplete. I know how it will end. And it will not end well.
Come on. Come out. Come on. Let's go outside.
Out! Get out! What are you doing here? What are you doing here?
Very well. I'll leave. I'll leave you.
What's happening?
We're leaving. Everyone knows he's a delicate man. Just months from now, he'll take his own life.
Don't say that. Please.
Come on. You have to do this on our own. Go to the church at the right time and hope the monster still turns up.
I'm ready. Let's go.
I'm sorry you're so sad.
But I'm not. Sometimes these moods torture me for weeks, for months. But I'm good now. If Amy Pond can soldier on, then so can Vincent van Gogh.
I'm not soldiering on, I'm fine.
Oh, Amy, I hear the song of your sadness. You've lost someone, I think.
I'm not sad.
Then why are you crying? It's all right. I understand.
I'm not sure I do.
Okay. Okay. So, now, we must have a plan. When the creature returns...
Then we shall fight him again.
Well, yes. Tick. But last night we were lucky. Amy could have been killed. So, this time, for a start, we have to make sure I can see him too.
And how are we meant to do that suddenly?
The answer is in this box. I had an excellent, if smelly, godmother.
Don't like.
John for dinner, a bunch of fun, but yeah,
That
it's
was
like
awesome.
it
Yeah.
seems like it wasn't. It seems like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, but also like in terms of the industry and everything, like an eternity ago.
Is that when we met? Was there any talks about? I don't even remember if AI was a thing back then. Like I think we had no. It was like up to a point, but it still wasn't like as crazy as the last few
Murmurs,
months.
yeah.
Yeah.
Murmurs for
I
sure.
mean, Midjourney was a thing, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Like, you know. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I think when you came down, there was like I don't think because I've started like paying a lot of attention when Steven Zapata made his video.
Yeah. Yeah. That was.
I think a
fantastic,
lot of
yeah.
artists did actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because like there was so many different topics back then, and now it's just like literally everyone is talking about AI.
Mhm.
Like no matter what, like you just cannot escape that conversation whatsoever.
Mhm.
So I want to escape that conversation at least at start.
Listen,
and talk about you, dude.
I bet we'll find our way back to it.
Yeah, we
but,
definitely will. I'm pretty sure.
but,
It's yeah, it's inevitable.
I'm honestly like fine skipping it entirely. I've been kind of out of it for a while.
Yeah, we
but
can.
yeah, let's see how it goes.
Yeah, let's see where conversation gets us for sure.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thanks for hopping on. I was just like looking at the library of podcasts that I've done. I just couldn't believe we have never done one, and we've known each other for like a while now.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's but yeah, I'm stoked to be here officially. Yeah.
I'm not gonna
Hopefully
blame
this-
myself for this misfortune. For
I'm,
sure.
I'm not gonna blame you. Yeah,
what you've been up to, man? Because you had a lot going. I mean, I've seen you travel like back and forth and doing some mocap sauce and
Yeah.
directing a bunch of shit. Like, there's a lot of going on in your life.
Yeah, it's sort of coming back to where it was before all of this COVID nonsense kind of happened. Like it used to be like when I was pre-COVID, I used to travel quite a bit to Axis and back. I live in Serbia, and Axis is a studio that I mostly collaborate with. They're based in Scotland, in Glasgow. So I used to like travel back and forth quite a lot, and also like a bunch of conferences. That's where we first met, like ages ago on a THU conference in Portugal.
Yeah.
But that was like that's how life used to be, and then it all just stopped, and it was all work from home, and I've been working from home ever since. So the transition didn't really impact me all that much, or at least I
Right.
thought it didn't impact me much at the beginning, because I was like, I'm still doing the same thing. I'm still working from home, so it's like, things should be the same. But then after a year, I kind of realized like, I'm really like missing that aspect of going to, because I kind of had the best of both worlds. I really like working from home. I really like my own little setup and my own time and all of that. But I also really like, traveling and meeting up with the teams that I'm working with, and just hanging out and stuff like that. It's kind of like a weird mix of a kind of, I don't know if it's like an introverted extrovert or the other way around, but like it would be like a week of traveling, and then I would go back and crawl back into my cave and just kind of focus for like months. And that really worked well, and then it kind of just stopped. So I'm really happy, like it's coming back just now, like it's opening up a little bit, especially when it comes to motion capture shoots. We've had a couple of, I think 3 or 4 remote sessions during COVID, and that was that was just weird. It works if you have somebody on the other side and to act as your AD and stuff, but it's just such a weird, you definitely want to be there on the day. So that's something that I'm very, very happy I'm getting to do again. Hence my last visit a couple of months ago. But yeah, it's kind of it's been just a lot of work, I guess, in the past couple of years. Balancing personal work, client work, all this stuff. You're very, very familiar with, Maciej, as well.
Yeah. I am.
Hence my haircut, which is a new addition.
or lack of.
Or lack of, yeah. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell, I think.
Yeah, dude, that's the only thing I cannot complain is the amount of hair I have on my head,
Yeah, no, it looks good, and you have the.
It's getting
have
messy. It's like if I let it grow, I look like homeless, and it's all like grayed out, and and all that shit. But I cannot complain. I don't know. All my friends are balding. Like, what the fuck?
It's the wonders of working in front of a computer all day long.
I know, it's just this glare.
Yeah.
This artificial sunlight.
It's that.
Hair removal.
It's also a little bit of genetics. But
no, I'm joking, obviously.
Yeah.
Did you guys have like crazy lockdowns over there in Serbia, or was it just like who gives a fuck?
No, it was crazy at one point. Not like Australia crazy, but it was a little bit intense in a specific point. I think the intensity part came from the government not being able to support all of the people stopping working. In a little bit more of developed countries, I guess like people had more support, but here they were like everybody stop, but we're not gonna do anything about supporting your livelihoods for the amount of time that you're stopping. I mean, they did the very minimum that they can do or could do, but it's just and I think that's why it didn't last for long. It kind of most people kind of eased back into it because everyone was like, well, fuck, I have to work. So I honestly don't remember, man. It's like it's so close, like it's only a couple of years ago, but I think like my mind kind of blocked the whole situation out a little bit. I think in reality it probably lasted for way longer than I remember it. It probably lasted for like 6 months maybe of like intense lockdowns, and maybe 6 months of kind of easing out of it, and then it was sort of back to normal, even though we had kind of the rules and everything.
It seems like the last 3 years, it just kind of compressed into like a mush.
Yeah.
And like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, with so many things, it's just
it's. I can't remember who I was talking with and then saying that too, but it almost feels like last 3 years were more packed and intense than 20 years prior.
Yeah. It most certainly feels like that, and it's all the technological stuff as well. That's like, I mean, I'm still wrapping my head around all this Unreal stuff. That's why kind of I'm not even like paying too much close attention on the AI side of things. But it's just insane, like how the rate of development that it's happening right now, and the opportunity and the lack of opportunity it's creating in both respects. Like it's like nuts.
Yeah, it's getting out of hand. I agree. Not only AI, but just generally speaking, like the rate at which the technology is moving and software development, hardware development, and all that stuff is just becoming like very difficult to keep track. You know?
Yeah. It used to be like, oh, there's a new thing, I'm gonna focus on this, and that's it. But now it's just too much stuff.
Yeah, I remember like when Fusion 360, for instance, came out, or like Moi 3D, and then like Fusion 360 after, and it felt like, oh my god, like software is developing so fast. Now you can actually do like CAD modeling that looks like 3D modeling, and can be used in concept art and directing and everything. But that was like stretched over years,
Yeah,
it wasn't oh, that was such a last week thing to do,
Yeah. Pretty soon you're just gonna be prompting all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
But that was I never got into the Fusion or any of the typical kind of CAD 3D modeling stuff. I love the stuff that you and Ash did for what was that, like the YouTube countdown mecha thing. That was fucking dope. I love the look of that. I assume there's a bunch of that stuff in there, like hard surface. Design overload.
It came on the backs of the work that I've done for Ghost in the Shell, which was like that whole process, like first through like Learn Squared and doing like all this kind of Fusion 360. I did the course about this. And then you kind of use that into like Ghost in the Shell production, where building that stuff, and then like seeing it being basically printed out from the CAD files was kind of wild. And then like once you get in the rhythm of doing it, it just becomes like almost like a second nature, because you understand where the things go, and it's like a lot of booleans and whatever, but it's all like super clean and sharp.
Yeah,
and
like,
it works we used
in comparison to like 3ds Max booleans, which are never work.
Are you still using 3ds Max?
No,
or?
no. I'm like you. I'm Team Blender all the way.
Yeah, you got that cult going, huh?
Yeah, I got that. Yeah, very specific Blender cult just for previous purposes, but I absolutely love it. But yeah, Max is kind of history. I think for me, is just there's just no need at this point, I'd say.
Yeah, I've been barraging Ash about Blender recently. I started to sound like those dudes who were like, back in 2018, like Blender 2.8, you gotta switch,
Yeah. I mean, it is difficult. I kind of, I get up on my high horse and say that, I'm using Blender and, not using Max anymore, but I only use it for previs, and that's kind of, I think that's the main reason why I use it. Like, I wouldn't be able to, I think if I had to switch all over, like, to production, to use Blender for, like, final things, I think I'd have a much harder time adjusting to it, but because it's just previs, it's all temp, it's all placeholder, it doesn't have to look perfect. It's just I can use it and I can get kind of good results out of it. But it's difficult when you have spent so much time in a single software and your muscle memory and everything is so in tune with it. But that's why like the combo of Blender and Unreal Engine for me, like that gets it kind of done now. So I can totally see like why Ash is being reluctant, like just because of his process and how in tune he is with his process. So yeah, I can totally get that. And hey, if it's working, like why change it? So
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
there are kinks in the armor, let's say.
There are, but I mean, if I you know,
I
if I
hear
look at
them all the time.
yeah, no, I absolutely, yeah, I get that. It's like when I, but for example, like with your work, like with the, you know, the stuff that you're doing now, like I can totally see like how easier all of that stuff and faster it is in Blender than what it used to
Oh
be in
yeah,
Max.
no,
Like
no
no
contest.
compare, yeah, literally, like just the shading aspect of it, and you know, like it's I can totally see for that type of style, like it's no contest. But for the kind of more, you know, what Ash is doing with like Redshift and Corona and all of that stuff, kind of all those engines, I do still think like there are probably some higher efficiencies of doing that in Cinema than in Blender. It's kind of similar to, you know, like that Huxley thing that a couple of years ago. I would probably never do that in Blender just because of the file sizes and how heavy everything was. I think Blender would,
Yeah,
you know, fucking
it would
choke on
explode.
yeah, it would just, you know, die. But Redshift and Max just gonna ate through all of that, like no issues. So it really depends, I think, on kind of what, you know, what the requirements are. But yeah, it's insanely powerful, man. Like every year, like I've just every day, like I'm seeing something. Like just today, I saw like somebody made like a crowd thing with GeoNodes. I haven't even like touched GeoNodes. I mean, I get the concept of them, but I haven't even opened that once. I've seen like this crazy setup plugin for like crowds and animating crowds with GeoNodes, and it's like insane. It's
Yeah,
almost
it's pretty
like,
wild.
yeah, it's proper insane.
I played
yeah.
with GeoNodes a bit. It's
Yeah.
it's like a baby Houdini basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. You
Yeah.
can get a lot of crazy stuff. It has its limitations compared to like at least like how far I could push Houdini and how much I understand GeoNodes. There was definitely a difference, you know.
So did you
Do
actually
you-
play with Houdini a little bit?
Yeah, well, when I did my Showtime short,
Oh,
like, I
right,
did
so the-
quite a lot of Houdini like simulations for smoke and
Oh,
the
right.
tearing of cloth, all that kind of stuff, like the volume stuff.
That's
Yeah.
big respect. I never even like I made a conscious decision of like, all right, I'm not. This is just not. I'm not gonna go into this. Like this is
Yeah.
too much. But yeah, Houdini is pretty insane. Like it's insanely powerful.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get into it, you know. Like I mean, it got easier over years, I believe. Like now, I'm pretty sure there's just so many like presets you can just get going with presets, you know.
Yeah.
But like honestly, like the real power of Houdini is like if you actually understand it like completely and dive in like fully dive in.
Yeah, if
Because
you can
otherwise,
code
like,
and all of
why
that
would
stuff.
you use it? You know.
Yeah. Do you know Simon Hallmetal? Did you ever talk to him? He's like a motion graphics, motion designer.
The name rings the
director.
bell, but I would need to
But
look him up.
He's like very, very proficient in Houdini, and like the stuff that he does is just like insane. He did a lot of the years ago. He worked with Man vs Machine, so a lot of those like.
Okay.
You remember when it was like the whole kind of slew of Nike commercials and all of the kind of like super uber designed commercials for shoes, but they all look freaking amazing. So he worked there. I think he runs his own company now. But yeah, he's one of those guys where it's like the absolute kind of, you know, understanding of both like the, you know, the workings of every single solver in Houdini, but also like the rendering and everything else. And yeah, once you get to that level, it's like, oh yeah, like you can pretty much do anything you want. It's pretty insane.
How deep do you go in like technicalities and like, you know, dirty hands?
Well, I mean, I get my hands dirty quite a bit with my own films, kind of that I produce with you know, friends and my small team. But that's kind of, you know, hands-on work on pretty much anything I can do or that I need to do. If I need to learn something new, I probably forget about it like the moment I'm done with it. So I'm not really technical at all in those terms. Like for example, like I've used Unreal Engine for both like irradiation and for beckoning, and that's like by far like I'm not going back. That's the and the way we're approaching beckoning right now, Unreal Engine is literally at the heart of the production pipeline and the budgeting and everything. So that's definitely going to be the main tool for the film. But like I haven't used it since we did the trailer, So when we get to actually getting back into the production, it'll probably take some time getting reacquainted. And it was the same thing before. I made irradiation and then I didn't use it for like a year or something like that. Or I kind of fiddled around with it and tested some stuff, but it's not really like I'm using it on a daily basis. So it's kind of, it's like learning stuff for the needs of the film that you're currently working on. But it's obviously, the technicality side of things, it's not my focus. So, I have that past experience that I can understand it and I can learn it. But as soon as I'm done with it, because it's not my focus, I'm just kind of, my brain just reshuffles it and kind of throws it away. It's and yeah, that's fine. That's honestly like I enjoy that process. So yeah.
Do you like dabbling in software at all? Is that like something that is fun for you?
Not necessarily. I mean, so here's the deal. So like the Blender definitely brought back the fun a little bit. Like the Max for the longest time was really fun when I was learning and exploring all the different tools and plugins and whatnot. But then when I kind of focused more on the kind of the stories and all of that stuff, the tech side of things kind of faded away and took like a back seat. And then for the longest time, I was just kind of dreading, production, because it was always, oh, how am I going to render this? How am I going to do this? And it was just, even like the simplest things like the previs were not really fun. So that's where Blender really brought back the fun in 3D for me. It's the previous side of things, that the fact that you can see, and you can compose the shot in the context of lighting because you have Eevee in the viewport, and it's very similar to the quality you're getting out of Unreal. That was like really, really like bringing back the fun in it. But also it's like the small things, like the fact that, just the way the UI is made and the kind of, the user experience in Blender is, it's the simplest things that I really like and that really kind of brightened up the experience a little bit. Like for example, like in Max, if you have a keyframe on the timeline, you have to, hold it down, press the mouse button down and then drag and then release the mouse button and you'll move the keyframe. But in Blender, you just select it and you press G and you're not holding down anything. You can just, move the mouse freely. And it's like simple things like that are very, very simple, that are you think like are very basic. Like on the daily, when you're animated on a lot of things, like just the fact that you're not holding down your finger, your index finger, like on the mouse all the time. I mean, I guess you don't have any of these problems if you're using like a pen or something, but I'm all the way mouse. So it's
you're
like
mousy.
Yeah. So it's like, simple stuff like that is like changing the aspect of working in it so much. It's making it so much more comfortable. And, like the interface is the same for, whether you're kind of working in the, in the animation timeline, or if you're working in the shading nodes, or everything remains the same. All of the kind of shortcuts and all of the kind of hotkeys are remaining the same. So it's just, it makes so much sense, and it's kind of very, very intuitive to kind of get into. And then it was kind of the same with Unreal. I think with Unreal, it took me quite a long time. When I say a long time, I think like just, starting over and over again, because I saw the potential of a real time, but I didn't really want to kind of switch. And then I learned it from scratch for 4 separate times before I finally kind of, broke through. But it's that immediate frustration of, this is so different from anything you've experienced so far. And it's like, why is this like that? And it's because it's a games engine. It's not a 3D software, and it has its own logic. But once you're through it, like the first time I went into Unreal, I experienced I hate the navigation. I want the same navigation as I have in Max because that's what I'm used to. And then after only a month of using Unreal, when I went back to Max, I was like, oh, I hate this. I want my navigation from Unreal. So it's it's so intuitive that it takes you 1 month to kind of forget the past whatever it was, like 10 years or something of using a software. So there's bits and bobs that I kind of find intriguing, kind of on the technicality level, just to kind of figure some stuff out. But it's mostly kind of approaching it from the perspective of, all right, how does this help, with the next film? How does this help with the technique that I'm going to be using? How does this, it's always kind of trying to kind of approach it like that. It's never for the technicalities alone, I think. But yeah, I try not to dabble too much these days.
Yeah, it gets tricky. Once you have to run a team, like you don't really get much time to actually dive really deep into like specific shots and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, it's kind of it also really depends on kind of the way you're working. There's like for example, the way I'm working for the way I'm kind of doing most of the client work these days through Access or through Hydra. I like to, if I have the time and the schedule is not too crazy at the start, I like to take my time and set up the previs on my end, and that way I can really have my stamp on it. I can kind of set everything up. It's not going to be the final camera animations. It's not going to be things that are going to be fairly placeholder, but it gets the intention kind of very clear from very early on. And then if that's clear and if that's set, and if I'm like, if both the client and myself are like, yeah, that's, this is what we want, then it kind of, streamlines the rest of the process quite a bit. And it allows me to be like very hands-off in the later stages of the project, but kind of hands-on, extremely hands-on in the early stages of the project. So that's kind of something that works quite well, I think. And I was, for the longest time, I was kind of shying away from doing that. And I wanted to kind of, I guess, just kind of try to, communicate my intentions with, just words, I guess. But I think it's you kind of realize after a while, kind of what your advantages are as a director. And if you have a very clear advantage of, hey, I can use 3D and I can do previs fairly efficiently, or, you can draw amazing storyboards or key art or whatever to convey your idea and your attention. Well, why not do that? Why shy away from that if that's going to benefit the entire production, the team, the project, everything. That's definitely kind of the preferred way of working now, I think.
Yeah, it makes a big difference if you can just show exactly what you want and what you need,
Yeah.
Especially like storyboarding and like animatics and all that kind of like previs, all that kind of stuff. Hello everyone, this is Art Cafe episode 128. Please welcome my next guest, Tim Zarki. Tim is a 3D artist at Oculus with a degree of industrial design. I first came across Tim's work years ago, and it is a long overdue appearance on the podcast. Sit back, and I hope you'll enjoy this one. Let's go.
And so to go from that to, giant company with like 60,000 employees that has its own like transportation network and like infrastructure, and is like, I think there's, so like the city where Facebook, so I work for Facebook technically, and
Right.
the city of Menlo Park, which is where Facebook is located, I think Facebook's employees are now like higher than the population of the city. And so like it's almost like Facebook is a city unto itself in a way. And so they have a lot of like back and forth with the city governments about things all
Okay,
the
so
time.
how much truth is in the Silicon Valley show in terms of how the city
It's-
feels?
I can't even watch it because it's too close to being accurate. It's like it's uncomfortable to like watch the show because it's too real. Like the comedy is great. It's like super well written, but it's
Yeah.
like too
I love that show.
uncanny
It's funny.
valley. Yeah.
I have a better question actually. How do you think the city is going to change after COVID-19?
I think a lot of people are going to leave. Well, at least I'm hearing that a lot of people are leaving right now just because, well, it's like there's a lot of different factors, obviously,
Yeah, of
that play
course.
into this. Like some of it is, small businesses closing, so people don't have jobs, and so they're leaving for that reason. Some of it is like the big tech companies are saying, hey, like we're just going to let people be remote from now on, and you can live wherever you want to, and we'll negotiate that with you. So like a lot of people who lived here for that, to work at these companies now they have other options and don't, can essentially move wherever they want to and keep
Right.
their job. And so I think there's a lot of people who are like, well, if I can live wherever I want, I'm not going to tolerate paying how much it costs to live in San Francisco or anywhere else in Silicon Valley. So I think a lot of people are leaving for that reason. But I don't know. I feel like there will always be like more people to come take their place. So
Yeah.
I think like rent prices in San Francisco are down like 9% right now, but I don't know if that will continue to go down or if it's going to bounce back up. And it's really hard for me to say.
Rent in LA did not drop. It dropped
Really?
for like a few weeks and then rocketed back on. So I think the assumption is that everything's gonna be like back to normal, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I
it wouldn't surprise me.
I talk with some of the friends that live here as well, and they
And we are RPGs.
Illustrations you do, or even concept art. When it comes to painting people in your illustrations or concept art, I'm going to show you some of his great paintings of women. Just look at this, how gorgeous this looks. It was beautiful then when he painted it, and it's still beautiful now. One of the things that he used to do, and other great illustrators, they would put the hand near the face. The hand would help in getting across the emotion of the character. Bernie Fuchs, one of my favorite illustrators, he would do that a lot in his illustrations. But to be able to do that, you really need to be good with painting hands. And here's another example of the way he painted women's faces. When it comes to skin color, he said, and I'm quoting him because I'm reading right from the page in his textbook. So he said, "Skin, as idealized in advertisements and most story illustrations, is a smooth surface without shine, tinted in what I can only describe as skin color. For reproduction in four-color process, this color is a warm beige, slightly yellowish, slightly pink, like what you see here, for example." So he continues to say, "I used to lay in skin tones in transparent wash, beginning with some yellow, some red, and some burnt sienna mixed first on a palette. Now I make it opaque or semi-opaque, starting with the same mixture. And that mixture is his base color. And I'll be talking more about that later in the video." Now, he continues to say, "I use a nest of 3-inch glass kitchen bowls, and I try to mix up enough of the basic skin color in one of them to last through the painting of one figure or face. And that's this base color that I'm talking about, that he mixes up." So he says, "If it is opaque, I can use it later to lighten areas where I have made the modeling too dark. Once dry, it is sometimes hard to hit a particular mixture right on the nose, if you have to match it with a fresh batch. The procedure goes roughly as follows. The major outlines of the face are brushed in with a light brown wash, and the heavier shadow areas indicated and allowed to dry. The mouth is painted in. If the lighting has high contrast, I like to put the deepest shadow tones in first. Then the basic skin tone goes on, ignoring any lighter areas or minor modeling. At this stage, the drawing looks like a poster, but the darkest and middle tones are established, and I will not have to do much with them. The shadows are a flat brown, and if these demand more attention, they are handled now. So what this looks like, I'll show you later in the video when I do a painting of a head according to how he does it. And here's another beautiful illustration of heads. Just look how well constructed these heads are, how beautifully painted. No wonder he was the most sought after illustrator for painting gorgeous, beautiful looking women. And here's yet another beautifully painted head of a woman. And again, you can see that he puts a hand near the face. And it helps to express her more pensive attitude. You might be wondering, what kind of tools did he use to paint his great illustrations? I'm going to show them to you now. In this photo from his textbook, you can see him sitting next to his tabaret, and there's a butcher's tray that he used to mix his colors on, and then an assortment of various colors, as you can see there, and he used a lot of colors, and the glasses of water that he used to clean his brushes, and a large assortment of brushes, as you can see there. He had several butcher's trays of different sizes that he used, and the brush holders that he used, they ranged from beer mugs to pottery jars. He used transparent watercolors as well as opaque designer's colors, and they're all spread out on his tabaret, as you can see there. And he used a bottle of wetting agent, which makes the watercolor flow over slick surfaces better. And the glasses of water that you see there are beakers from a scientific glass manufacturer's stock line. He lines up all the watercolor tubes because he says it makes work go faster that way. He doesn't have to go hunting around for them if they were spread all over the place, so he knows where each color is located. He also used a rubber syringe for water supply by the drop, and he used kitchen glassware for mixing large batches of color. He didn't use an easel to paint on. It's a drawing table that he used. So now you know the tools that he used to paint his great illustrations with. John Whitcomb was one of the greatest illustrators of all time of painting beautiful women. I was able to get the textbook that he made specifically for the art course that was available. And in that book, he reveals the secrets of what makes beautiful women for illustrations. And I'm going to be showing you what he talked about and what he showed in that textbook. If ever there was an illustrator that knew how to make women look glamorous and beautiful in illustrations, it was John Whitcomb. Here's a page from Whitcomb's textbook in which he shows how he idealized a woman's face for his illustrations. I'm going to enlarge this. And at the top, it says, idealizing the face. The face of a beautiful model goes through several changes on its way into an illustration or magazine cover. And also, here are the things that he does to make the model that he photographed here even more beautiful than she already is. So I'll point out what he's doing here. So over here he says the eyebrows are raised. The next thing he does is this. The irises of the eyes are enlarged very slightly. Then the next thing he does, shadows from lighting are edited for simplicity and sometimes left out altogether. Frontal lighting is more flattering to a woman's face than shadows falling across the face. Then over here it says, mouths are usually made a little fuller, especially the lower lip. Then over here it says, superfluous lines, like laugh lines and wrinkles, and irregularities of jaw and nose are ignored. And over here it says, eyes are sometimes moved further apart. This device helps to make a face younger. Over here, he says, the width of the face is narrowed slightly, since in life, your two eyes see a face that is a composite of the image from both. Eyes are roughly 3 inches apart, so that your left eye sees a little more of the left cheek, your right eye a little more of the right. Your visual impression is that of a thinner face. So making those changes results in what you see here. I'm going to bring in the photo from which he worked, and then I'll place his drawing right next to the photo, and you can compare the two. See what changes were made from the photo, which are the changes that I pointed out to you, that he says he makes. The drawing of the woman looks even more beautiful than the photo of the woman. If you're an illustrator, that's what you need to do. You need to enhance reality. Idealize it. That's what people want to see. Otherwise, you could just use a photo and not go through that whole process of idealizing a face. But that's not what people want to see in illustrations. And now you know how to idealize a woman's face. Now here's another page from his textbook in which he talks about how he paints eyes, women's eyes. And I'm going to enlarge this. Now I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can read it. Just stop the video and read it. I'll just read a little bit. So it says at the top, the most important feature of the eye is the iris. For some reason, girls with irises a little larger than usual seem to be prettier. This is a critical measurement, since getting an iris too big is unpleasing. When I draw a pretty girl, I sometimes spend a long time making the irises smaller and larger until they look just right to me. So you can continue reading this. And here's another page from his great textbook on which he talks about how to light the face. I'm going to enlarge this. And I'm not going to read the body of text here. It would just take too long. So you can read it if you want. And I highly recommend that you do read this. So you just stop the video and read it. But I will read some of the other text here that is next to the heads, the captions that you see there. And I'll read this caption right there. It says, light source high at right. Reducing modeling of face to shadow down cheek at left. Line down nose and hollow under cheek. Then this caption here. It says, unnecessarily complicated system of shadows tends to clutter up this smiling face. Main light source from direct left. Shadow side illuminated from direct right. A simpler lighting plan would have made this drawing more successful. And that's what you need to do. You need to plan your lighting. Don't just jump in doing the painting of a face without first having some kind of plan in mind. Where the light is coming from, how strong the light is going to be, where the shadow is going to be. Is it going to be direct light? Is it going to be diffused light, window light, sunlight, candlelight? What's the kind of light under which the face is going to be seen? Then moving to the last caption right there, it says, softly diffused light from below on the right, confining brightness to chin and mouth. Eyebrows help expression, but lighting emphasizes mouth. So study these heads. Take a careful look at how he uses light and shadow here. And on this page, he gives more information about lighting the head. And again, I'm going to enlarge part of that page. I'm going to read this text here. So he says, the movies have discovered that certain formulas of lighting are kinder than others to certain movie stars. There are several actresses who must always be lit from above and straight ahead. This washes out pouches under eyes, emphasizes jawlines, and accents shadows from eyelashes. In drawing a face, the light source, or sources, if there are several, must be established before much modeling can be done. In general, the most flattering lighting is fairly flat, that is, evenly distributed over the smooth parts of a face. Only a very fine face looks well with strong lighting from below, or from one side. In illustration, dark shadows cast upwards across faces are used only for special mood effects, or in night scenes where the situation demands it. The simpler the lighting, the more chance the features have to show expression and feeling. So this is very important information about how to light a woman's face in illustration, and it's done with light that is evenly distributed over the smooth parts of the face, as he says. So it's flat lighting that he's talking about, lighting the face from the front or from slightly above and maybe a little to the side, but the light needs to be distributed over the face evenly, as he states. This will clearly show the features of the face and what the expression is. The features are not hidden by shadows. I'm going to read this caption here. It says, flat lighting with perspective indicating that the light was close, nose shadowed on top, chin underneath. This effect would be impossible to achieve with direct sunlight. And this caption reads, lighting from single source at right front. Light patch on left cheek makes face look complicated at first glance. I've forgotten the story now, but I thought the odd lighting might make her look more like a lady spy. And then the last caption over here says, lighting from direct front, above, intended here to emphasize facial expression of despair. Shadow from hat cuts across middle of nose, does not interfere with eyes. This is a movie trick now widely used in close-ups. So this is extremely helpful information in lighting a woman's face. What's coming up now is me painting a head, applying the things that I just talked about that he does to the heads that he paints of women to make them gorgeous looking, beautiful looking, to idealize them. I'll start off by drawing the features. I'll start with eyebrows. You need to know what he did to paint eyebrows. Then eyes. I'm just roughing this in, as you can see. Then the nose. You need to know how to paint the nose. You need to know how to paint the lips. That is how he did it. Skin. So I'm just going to write skin in here. Also proportion. Now, this is very important. Proportion. The features, they need to be evenly spaced on a head for beauty to result. And the way you can do that is by using an equilateral triangle. So I'm just going to rough this in here. There's a triangle. So this is an equilateral triangle. And then I'm going to add another one to the bottom. Again, an equilateral triangle with the sides of the triangle all equal length. Now, the features are placed according to this triangle. Right here, that's where the hairline is. Then right here at that corner, an eye is added. And I'm just doing this rough, as you can see. The point of that triangle falls about right there between the eye. Then on the other side, again, like that. Then down here at this point, that's where the middle of the lips occur. So it's something like this. And then the eyebrows somewhere around there, like that. And of course, the nose somewhere around there. So symmetry is what you see here. Symmetry makes a face look beautiful. If I did something like this, for example, and I'm doing this in real time and really quick. Let's say I have the top of the triangle right there at the top of the head, coming down like this, over like that, and then the lower triangle is much larger, something like that. And then I place the features here, and the mouth right about there, and the nose right about there. Looking at this face and then comparing it to that face, you can see, I think, clearly that this face doesn't look beautiful because it doesn't have that kind of symmetry, that even distribution of the features like this face has. So you can see that beauty is to be found within this kind of symmetry. In the paintings by John Whitcomb of beautiful women, you can see this kind of symmetry in the faces he paints, this kind of even distribution of the features, and not this kind of unevenness of the distribution of the features. And here you don't see this kind of symmetry because the top triangle is smaller than the bottom triangle. But here you see that the top triangle is the same size as the bottom triangle. So therefore there is this symmetry from top to bottom and from left to right side, like that. Now here you have symmetry from left and from the right side, from left to right, but you don't have the symmetry from top to bottom. And when you don't have that, then you don't have this kind of beauty that results from the symmetry of equilateral triangles like you see here. Now, I should also mention that symmetry alone is not enough to produce interesting individual faces and beautiful looking women. Slight irregularities in the features and their placement is also necessary to gain individuality in the drawing. The breaking of the rule of symmetry must not, however, go too far. It is done deliberately and with good reason. All of us have heard that something has gone too far, and therefore it becomes spoiled because it looks too perfect. The standards for a beautiful looking woman, the kind that John Whitcomb painted, is full red lips, sparkling eyes, a small nose, and a fine, healthy complexion. His women looked healthy. John Whitcomb's paintings of beautiful women, their lipstick is always perfectly applied, and the complexion has a powdered look, and she looks clean. Also, his paintings of women, they have a soft look. They don't have really sharp edges. There's more of a softness to them, thereby making them look more feminine. What I'm going to tell you now are the exact words that are written in John Whitcomb's textbook. So this is what he said about eyebrows. He says, eyebrows are the easiest things on a face to manipulate for expression. For a pretty girl, the brows are usually a generous distance above the eye. So let's say I have an eye here and an eye over here, and the eyebrows, therefore, would be further up, something like that. If they aren't, she may look sinister. That is, if the eyebrows are too far below, something like this, then he's saying that she may look sinister. So therefore, the eyebrows on a beautiful woman are further up like that, above the eyes. Now he goes on to say that the eyebrows shouldn't look plucked or make a thin line. He says, I prefer eyebrows fairly light in tone, never painted as dark as the eyelashes. So let's say the eyelashes over here are going to be much darker
Then the eyebrows. So something like that. Now the eyes here are a little too far apart, so I'm going to bring them in a little bit. Something like this. They're about an eye apart, the length of one eye, something like that. You see? I think that's better. Actually, he also says that when the eyes are further apart, which means that they're apart a little more than one eye, that makes a woman look even more beautiful. So, something like that. The eyebrows, he says, can be slightly curved or peaked, or just slightly curved. You see, something like that. Then he says that the eyebrows are wider toward the nose, right here, and then they taper a bit as they move further toward the side of the face. So you can see that this part is thinner than that part. So it's tapering a bit, like that. And you see that more gentle curve. Now he goes on to say it's best to draw them in with a basic tone. So I've already established that. So that's the basic tone. And then add just enough hair texture to suggest that they are alive and growing. So I can add a little bit of texture, draw in some of the strands of hair, like this, you see? Going in that direction, like that. But first you establish the basic tone, and then you add the texture of the hair. Now he goes on to say that the eyebrows should be slightly uneven. So when you look at this brow here and the other one, you can see that there is a slight unevenness like that, you see? It doesn't have that perfect edge to it. There's like a little irregularity of edge, gives it that unevenness. And then toward the middle, right about here, that's where he says a slight sheen can be added. So something like this, you see? See that lighter tone that I'm adding right there? In addition, the eyebrow gets a little lighter as it moves toward the outer side of the face. See right there? Right there? And there. It's dark right there, and then it gets progressively lighter as it moves toward the outside of the face here. And then you have that sheen that I mentioned, about in the middle of the eyebrow, somewhere around there, something like that. And this kind of eyebrow helps to add interest to the face. So that's what he says. Now, moving on to a nose. Now, what he says about noses, he says the nose does not contribute much to a change of expression, but is the single most important item in a pretty face. If the nose is ugly, very little can be done with mouth and eyes to improve the face. Not many people notice when noses are good, but everyone senses the effect of a bad nose without quite knowing why. The nose of a pretty girl must not be extremely long, extremely short, or very wide. So let me just quickly draw in this nose here. Now the nose, he says, shouldn't be extremely wide. So you see the nose is not that wide. And what he usually does is you don't see much of this part of the nose. That is usually lost somewhat, so you don't see that part, but what you do see many times is a shadow that he places under the nose. like that. And then he adds the nostrils. See little dark spots like that for the nostrils. So you see that what you mostly see of the nose is the lower part of the nose, and this part is more or less lost, not made noticeable, because it's not very important. The lower part of the nose is more important. So I'll leave it at that. Now you can add a shadow sometimes like that on one side of the nose if the light's coming from this side here, and you see that in his paintings where he adds a shadow to one side of the nose, but then on the other side right here he loses that, so you don't see anything here, or you could see just a slight suggestion of the nose, just a very subtle tone, you know, something like that. You can hardly see it. Also, he says the shorter the nose, the younger the girl. And this part of the nose, the tip of the nose, if it looks chiseled, something like that, then that indicates an older woman. But if it's rounded like this, then that's more indicative of a young person. Moving on now to the mouth. Now here's what he says about the mouth. The mouth of a pretty girl is never visible without makeup, except possibly while sleeping or brushing her teeth. For a number of years, the generous mouth has won out over the thin lip variety, and lipstick makes it possible for a girl with either type to paint on a standard mouth neither too full nor too thin. Fashions in color run from dark wine color to pale cerise. But you will find that ordinarily a bright, clear red will reproduce the best in color. And he says, my preference is for no shine, and it is very seldom that I like the wet lipped appearance achieved with highlights. This means that the mouth is usually painted in rather a flat overall tone with a darker line to indicate the contour between. So let me just quickly paint in, or draw in rather, the mouth here. He says that he paints in a flat overall tone, which is what I've done here. You can see that. And the upper lip is wider than the lower lip. See how wide the upper lip is? Something like that compared to the lower lip, which is not as wide. Now what he'll also do to give some form to the lower lip, for example, he'll add a highlight right about there, and that helps to give this curve to the lower lip. It's like this. While the upper lip is more flat, like that. The lower lip comes out a little bit and then curves down like that. And adding that highlight, which is what he does, that then helps to give that appearance of curving down like that. It gives form, in other words, to the lower lip. So he paints the lips in a very simple way. The upper lip is just mostly flat. There might sometimes be an indication, just a little bit of something like that, of the center part of the upper lip, but usually it's just a flat tone. Also, he says that there is this darker line right there between the lips. You see? Something like that. Separates the upper from the lower lip. So I made a few adjustments here and there. Things weren't quite right. Things were a little crooked. The eyes were a little too far over toward the side of the face, and things like that that I needed to adjust. You might notice a little difference here. Remember, I'm doing this really quick and in real time, so I don't have a lot of time to be careful with the drawing. But what I also want to point out to you is, getting back to the equilateral triangle, as you know, this is where the eye, where the hairline starts. And when that triangle comes down like this, it goes to the outer side or outer corner of the eye right there, like that. You see, and the same for the other eye. It goes to the outer corner. And then it comes down to the middle of the mouth, right there, like that. So it's not perfect, but close enough. Something like that. That's where the features should fall. And now, what I want to talk about are the eyes. John Whitcomb says in his textbook, he says, the most important feature of the eye is the iris. For some reason, girls with irises a little larger than usual seem to be prettier. This is a critical measurement since getting an iris too big is unpleasing. When I draw a pretty girl, he says, I sometimes spend a long time making the irises smaller and larger until they look just right to me. So, the iris would be maybe something like that, a little larger than normal. That's what makes a pretty girl look even prettier. And I think you can see that already this face of the woman is looking rather nice, somewhat pretty. I'm gonna fill in the iris here like that. Now he goes on and he talks about the pupil or black spot in the iris. That depends on the amount of light striking the eye. In bright sunlight, a light eye will be extremely light and the pupil very small. In drawing a close-up of an eye, you must consider it to be a small mirror and that it will reflect points of light, if any are present. So those are the highlights he's talking about. And he says, the current fashion in eyelashes, going back to the time when he was doing illustrations, is to emphasize the top row from about the center of the iris to the outside corner. So that's about what I have so far. Something like this. And those lashes, they curve up like that from underneath the eyelid. They're not at the edge of the eyelid like that. They're underneath the eyelid, coming up like that, curving around like this. And there are more of them toward the outside of the eye, right there, than there are at this part of the eye. So there's hardly any here. And then as you move toward the outside of the eye, more of them are added. Make sure they curve upward, and they need to look different. Don't have them look the same. See how I'm changing them? And he adds quite a few of them in his illustrations of the eyes. And then at the bottom lid, it's like this, different lengths, just like the top. And then this part of the lower lid doesn't have any eyelashes, or hardly any. Same thing on this side here, starting at the top of the lower lid and then curving downward like that. More of the lashes are toward the outside of the eye, and then getting fewer as they move toward the inside of the eye. So getting back to what John Whitcomb says here in his textbook about the eyelashes, he says they should be somewhat uneven and of varying lengths, which is what I've indicated here. This too is a critical affair. If they're too long, they will look false. If too short, they will make the eye too plain. If too dark, they will make the girl look too heavily made up. Depending on the lighting, they will cast their own shadows, and I usually try to indicate that. So, I'm going to add a shadow here. The upper eyelashes are casting a shadow right there, you see, on the eye. And I'll add it over here as well. And I'm also going to add the pupil. Now I'll make the pupil small because there's a lot of light shining on this face, so therefore the pupil is going to be small. If there was a lot less light and she was more in shadow, the pupils would be much larger. And I think you can see that this face is beginning to look beautiful. So you see the shadow right there underneath the eyelashes, you see? That also helps to add depth to the eye. Makes the eyelashes look more like they're coming forward. And it helps to set the eye further back. And he says that the eyelashes have a definite curve upward, which is what I've indicated here. And you can see the varying lengths. They're all uneven. Also, what he says that when the eyelashes move upward like that, pointing upward, that also helps to give the face a more cheerful look. Things that are moving upward are associated with happiness, cheerfulness. In addition, what he says about the two eyes, he says never draw eyes that match. They are not found in nature and don't look quite right if you draw them that way. There can be subtle differences between the two eyes of any person, either in size, direction of iris, slant of lids, or the indication of skin folds above and below the eye. This is especially important in indicating certain expressions such as sadness, quizzicality, or delight. Eyebrows should never be identical either. Absolutely perfect faces, occasionally encountered in real life, fail to be entirely satisfying. When shut, an eye folds the two rows of lashes together, so they are drawn much darker. Now, he also mentioned highlights in the eyes, so I'm going to add a highlight here in that eye, and then a small highlight in the other eye as well. That really helps to bring the eyes to life even more. Gives them a somewhat glassy look. And let's see. Well, the next thing he talks about is hair. So, let's say there's the hair. And just rough that in here like this. So that's what I'm going to focus on right now. So, this is what John Whitcomb has to say about hair in his textbook. He says, as a frame for the face, hair tells a great deal about the girl, the state of her health, her financial standing, such as high style or lack of it, her age, up, down, or wind-blown hair, racial heritage, black, red, or Scandinavian blonde. Since hair can't very well be discussed without mentioning style factors, let's stick to the technique of rendering it, he says, so that it looks like hair, and let the fashion angles go until later. He goes on to say, I don't have any fixed routine in painting hair. Sometimes I wash in the general overall color flat, and when that is dry, I indicate highlights. If the girl is very blonde, I sometimes make the whole area a pale yellow wash and pencil in a very few darks on the shadow edge. For coal, black, or dark brown hair, it is only necessary to paint in the base color and add some judicious shine with opaques. The general lighting of the head determines the highlights. I'm going to paint in the hair on this head, and I'm adding a flat tone, like he says, for this really dark hair. So once a flat tone has been added, then the highlights, as he says, can be added. I'm doing this in real time. So let's see where I can place the highlights. And I haven't added the ears yet, as you can see. So let's say I'll add some highlights over here. And I'm adding them right over that flat, dark tone. So I changed the hair color to a dark brown with these yellow highlights, keeping the hair simple, like John Whitcomb usually does. Although sometimes you'll see in his illustrations he uses more highlights in the hair, but I'm keeping it very simple here. And I want to turn my attention to the skin color now. And in his textbook, he writes this about skin. He paints skin that looks kissable, sexy, smooth, adorable, and clean looking. This means no tans, no deep shadows, which meant, in turn, no strong lighting. Skin, he says, as idealized in advertisements and most story illustrations, in his day when he painted these great illustrations, that kind of skin is a smooth surface without shine, tinted in what I can only describe, he says, as skin color. Slightly yellowish, slightly pink. So what I'm going to do is bring in my magic picker here and show you the color of the skin. And he would mix a base color. So let's say something like this. And let me make a little puddle of that color over here. That's a little too saturated. Skin isn't that saturated. And add a little more red to this mixture. So the skin color would be a little less saturated. Try to get close to the kind of color that he used for skin, adding a little more red to that yellow. So I think that's about as close as I'm going to get. So he would mix up a pile of this color, and this would be the base color. So what he would do is he would apply that base color like this, very simply over the entire face, just a flat color like that. Actually, that color needs to be made lighter, and then I need to erase some things here, like that and this. So let me eliminate that. It's a little too dark. Needs to be made a little warmer and a little lighter. So let's see. A little grayer. Something like that, maybe. Let's see what that looks like. Maybe a little too yellow. So I'm going to add a little more red to the mixture, like that. Just go over that yellowish color. And I'll add that to this mixture over here. I think I have to add a little more red to that mixture. Right now it's not red enough. So let's see, something like that maybe. Just a little more red. I'll add it right over that more yellowish looking skin color. And I think that's about as close as I'm going to get to the skin color that he used. It's a nice warm color. Now what John Whitcomb also does with the eyelashes, what he does is he puts on the mascara quite heavily so that the eyelashes are darkened, something like this, and there's quite a few of these eyelashes. So heavy up on the mascara for the upper eyelashes on the eyes, and then there are fewer eyelashes on the lower lid. And this helps to add more interest to the eyes and makes the eyes look more pretty when they've been enhanced like this by adding more mascara. Also now for the lips, which I'm going to add color to, and what he does is he makes the lips quite red and saturated in color. So maybe something like this red, and I'm just going to quickly add that color to the lips, this red color. So this red saturated color that he adds to the lips gives more sex appeal to the woman when the lips are a saturated red like this. And then I think I'll add a highlight right there, pink highlight to the lower lip, which adds form to the lower lip. So I did a little bit more work on the mouth. And now what I want to mention is that John Whitcomb also added a slight touch of red where the cheeks are, something like that, very subtle. And also, I have to mention the chin. Now, he writes in his textbook, the chin is a negative feature, the lack of which makes a face look weak and moronic. If the chin is firm and adequate, and of a good size and shape for the face, nobody will remark on it. When emphasized on a girl, she looks a little witch-like. In young girls, the chin is rounded when seen from the side. If it is gradually pointed, the apparent age increases in direct proportion. Some chins are divided vertically down the middle with a faint cleft. This can be attractive in women if not overdone. In men, of course, it is a major attractive feature. So let me show you what it would look like if her chin were more pointed. So something like that. But with a more rounded chin, as I mentioned, she appears younger, but with a more pointed chin like this, she appears a bit older. So let's keep it a rounded chin, and what I'm going to also do is I'm going to add a neck. So women have a slimmer neck than men do, and just fill this in with the color of the skin, and I'll erase part of this over here to get a more slimmer looking neck. I'm doing this in real time, so I can't spend too much time on this, otherwise this video would run way too long. And I can't explain too many things because, again, that would make this video way too long. And I'm going to add a shadow right here to the bottom of the chin, soften the brush a bit. So something like this. And this keeps the image from looking too flat. If you have direct frontal lighting that washes out all of the shadows, then the image is going to look rather flat. But if you have a little bit of shadow, which can occur when the light source is a bit higher up, not too high, but high enough so that shadows will occur under the chin, for example, then you can get more of a dimensional look. You see, by adding that shadow, the whole face seems to come forward more. The shadow pushes back while the face pushes forward. So there's some depth that's created. If I didn't have that shadow there, and I'll eliminate that shadow, I think you can see now the portrait of her looks flat compared to when I add the shadow. The lighting he uses is a soft lighting which gives a diffused light over the whole face so that the face is descriptive. That is, everything reads clearly. You can make out what she looks like easily. Nothing is hidden, which it would be if shadows were added. He avoids shadows for many of his paintings, but not all of them. Some of them, depending on what mood he's after, can have dark shadows, but many of his paintings don't have those shadows going across the face in order to make the face look more descriptive and avoid shadows that can add age to a face and hide the face more. So if I did something like this, for example, in which a shadow falls across her face like this, then you don't see as much of her face. It doesn't read as clearly as it does when the entire face is lit, is in the light. And this creates an entirely different mood here, of course. So some paintings that he did do have strong light and shadow like this, but for the most part, they don't. He avoids this sort of thing, unless, like I said, he wants to achieve a certain mystery or a certain mood in his paintings of women. Then he'll add this kind of shadow. Also, what you'll find is a shadow underneath the lower lip, like I just added here. Usually there's a shadow there, something like that. And that's about all I'm going to say about the shadows on the face. So let me get rid of that shadow. Now the next thing I want to point out to you is that you need to soften the hairline, which he did. And you see the hairline right here, for example, and over here. So that hairline right now is way too hard. It's a hard edge that needs to be softened. So let me soften my brush here a little bit more, and then just roughly soften that hairline. Something like that, maybe. Soften the brush even more. Very important that you don't end up with a hard edge at the hairline there, where the temple is. So that hairline needs to be softened. Also, the outside edge right there, that should be softened a bit as well, not too hard, because if you have a hard edge like that, it looks like the hair has been pasted on to the background. And softer edges on the woman will make her look more feminine. So something like that, and soften the hair up here as well. A few strands of hair can come down onto her forehead like that. Now I'm going to add that shadow right there under her lower lip. So a shadow will occur there. Now when it comes to the ears, John Wickham usually made the ears about the length of the nose, so something like this. On young girls, you would make them a bit smaller and pinker. So I'm just roughing that in. See, something like that. And I'll add a reddish color like that to the ears. And I could do something like this. So I don't want to add too much detail. And that's about all I'm going to do on the ears. He didn't like painting ears. He said, ears defeat me. Ears and toes, he said. So in a lot of his paintings, you'll see that he doesn't paint the ears. Check out his great illustrations at Google. Just type in John Whitcomb, and you'll see some great illustrations of beautiful women. So something like that. So I did a little bit more work on the ears, but that's about it. And I can also add a little more red to the cheeks, which he used to do. So something like that. Not too much, just keep it more subtle. In addition, he avoided a hard edge where the shadow and the jawline is right here. You see, that edge is too hard. Don't add a hard edge like that. It needs to be softened. So I'm going to soften my brush. So something like that, softer edge. And some edges are lost almost completely. And you can see that right here. It's a very soft edge. I might even be able to lose that edge like that. That adds also a lot of interest when you have this variety of edges. Soft and hard edges, and some edges are lost. I want to talk about lighting, and I want to read you what John Whitcomb says about lighting from his textbook. He says, in general, the most flattering lighting is fairly flat, that is evenly distributed over the smooth parts of a face, just like what I'm showing you here. Only a very fine face looks well with strong lighting from below or from one side. In illustration, dark shadows cast upwards across faces are used only for special mood effects or in night. The whole, since I'm doing this in real time and real quick, I that occurs between the white in terms of the modeling on the face. And what I'm going to do is get rid of these lines that you see here. Don't need those. Clean up the face by getting rid of those lines. So what he was after with the skin was to achieve this smooth, creamy look. When there is a shadow on the side of the face like this, then you would also see a shadow on the side of the nose. So he would put a shadow like that on the side of the nose. And now the whole face has more form to it, doesn't look as flat. What I also want to focus on are the whites of the eyes and how Whitcomb handles those whites of the eyes. Now the whites of the eyes are in his paintings of women white. They look white, but they're not really pure white. He wants them white because he wants that contrast that occurs between the whites of the eyes and the surrounding color and value of the skin. Since the whites of the eyes are a lighter value than the value of the skin, there's a nice value contrast that occurs. So the whites of the eyes are actually an off-white of the color of the skin. So since the color of the skin is this color here, this grayed orange, or it should actually be a bit more like a beige color, I made it a little too saturated here. It should be a little grayer, which I'll make later. Again, this isn't 100% accurate. I'm doing this rather quickly, but it's enough to give you some idea of what John Whitcomb did. Now, what I want to mention about the whites of the eyes is what I'm going to show you now. So over here, you see me adding that skin color, but then I'm going to tint that skin color by adding lots of white to it, like that. But it's not a pure white. So I have to move my little color selector over toward the right a little bit. It will look white on the eyes. So I'm going to pick that up and add it over here to the whites of the eyes. Something like that. It might even be darker. So I add a little more of that skin color here, like that, and then add it to the whites of the eyes. So you see they're not pure white, but they look white. So I'm going to add white here just to show you the subtle difference between an actual white and then this off-white or tint of the skin color. You see the difference? But even though this is not a pure white, it still looks like white. So that's what he does. And some of his paintings of eyes, of the whites of the eyes, they may appear somewhat darker. They're not always white like this. He doesn't always repeat himself in exactly the same way. But for the most part, this is what he does. He likes to create this kind of contrast, like I mentioned, between the eyes, the whites of the eyes, and the surrounding skin color. That adds a nice contrast. Getting back to the eyebrows, what he also does is he softens this part of the eyebrow, the lower part in the front right there. That is softened somewhat compared to the edge above. That edge up there appears a bit harder, while the lower edge appears softer on the eyebrows. And each eyebrow, as I mentioned earlier, should look different. They shouldn't look exactly the same. So I'm softening the lower edge here on this eyebrow. When you compare the two eyebrows, you can see that they don't look exactly the same. Also, with the eyes, they don't look exactly the same. The eyelashes look different on this eye from that eye. This eye looks a little larger, this looks a little smaller. So these kind of differences need to be there, this kind of imperfection. And that helps to give individuality. Also, the eyebrows of the lower lid look different on this eye than they do on that eye. Now for the lips, see right now I have this curve going up and around like that. But what he actually does is he does this. When the lips are together like that, you see, it's this kind of curve. It's not like that. It's not dipping down like that and then around and over like that. It's like that. And I'll do the same for the other side. That's how he paints the upper lip. Now for the highlight on the lower lip, now I said that I put a pink here, but if the light source is yellow, then what he does is he adds a yellow highlight, but it's an off-white yellow highlight. So coming up here to my color selector here, I'll select a white. So let me select this off-white here, something like that. And sometimes he will also add a highlight to the upper lip, like that. Just a little highlight, something like that. So it's a yellow, but it's an off-white yellow, which means that the yellow is very close to white, but not white. It is, in other words, the color of the light source. See how those lips come alive with those highlights added like that? He doesn't always add these kind of strong highlights. He usually prefers a more matte look rather than a more wet and glossy look, but he does sometimes add these kind of stronger highlights. And the more matte look would be something like this, in which those highlights are toned down and fewer of them, something like that. When the highlights are toned down so that they're not as strong, not specular highlights, what John Whitcomb does is he adds pink. Pink is a tint of red, so it would be more like what I'm going to indicate now. See, it's more like this. So he can darken the highlight, and the lips would look more matte, not as glossy. Now, a few adjustments need to be made. Now, the skin that he paints isn't quite as saturated as this, so it's actually a bit more desaturated. It's not as warm and saturated, in other words. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the saturation a little bit using hue saturation here. And I'll just move the saturation slider over toward the left a little bit, thereby desaturating that color. So his skin color is a bit more like this. Don't make skin color overly warm looking, overly saturated looking. Skin color is more grayed like this, and somewhat cooler, not as warm as this. By graying it the way I did like that, it also cools the skin color a bit. So this skin color looks more like a beige than the previous one. So his skin color that he paints is more like a beige color. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Whitcomb would mix up a base color, which is similar to what I have here. He would then take that skin color, and to that skin color, he would then add other colors in order to get the color for the shadows on the face. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my magic picker and I'm going to select red. So if I move the little color selector downward like this in the direction of the blue, which is the coldest color, that red actually begins to get a bit cooler. So I'm going to move the color selector further down, something like that, and then I'm going to move this little circle color selector toward the grayer red and darker. move that over like that in order to gray that red and darken it. Now here I'm using black that is being added to the red, but Whitcomb wouldn't use black. He would use a complementary color to the red, which is green, to gray and darken the red color. Then he would take that color and mix it in with the base color like this. So I'm going to pick up some of that base color and add it to the shadow color here, and then he would mix those two together like that in order to get the correct shadow color to apply to the faces. So here you see what that shadow color looks like. And I'm going to soften my brush here. I already have a shadow color here, but I'll add that other shadow color, which is slightly different. And the neck actually has a bit darker shadow color than the color on the side of the face. And then I could use that also for the side of the nose, like that. Now, for the lighter parts on the face, those parts that are receiving a bit more light than what the face is receiving, he would again take that base color, like I'm doing now, and then he would mix up another batch of color that is a bit lighter and warmer than the base color. So, to mix that lighter and a bit warmer color that I need for the highlights, I need to move my color selector on my magic picker in the direction of yellow, which will warm up the color a bit. And since the light source here is yellow in color, some of that yellow is going to mix with the local color of the skin color, thereby changing that skin color slightly toward the yellow and a lighter value. Now, this is something you're going to need to learn about, how to design with color and light. Therefore, a more extensive knowledge of how light interacts with the surfaces upon which it falls is something you're going to need to learn about if you ever hope to paint really great pictures in color. And I can't go into all of that here. So what I'm going to do is move this little circle color selector in the direction of white. That is, I'm going to tint that color a bit. And I'm going to add that over here to my base color. You see right there? And then I'm going to mix the base color with the color that I just added and see what it looks like. Then the only way you're going to find out whether it's the right color or not is to apply that color to the face, which I'm doing now. So that looks about right. The modeling is kept very subtle, and I need to change the hardness of the brush to a very soft brush so that that color blends in nicely with the local color of the skin. And I might even add a bit lighter color to that mixture over here and see what that looks like. And on the forehead as well, you see it's slightly lighter and slightly warmer than the local color of the skin. And I'm going to add that also just a little bit to the top of the nose here, like that, and a little bit on the chin down here, something like that. This also helps to create a bit more variation of color on the face, so that the face doesn't look like it just has one flat color. If you do that, then the face doesn't have as much interest because it doesn't have enough color variety. But if you look at the face color now, you see various colors here. Some a bit more yellow, some a bit more reddish. The skin color is actually a variation of yellows and reds mixed together. That's what John Whitcomb did with his skin color that he painted. He created these kind of variations of yellow and red that you see here. Now the highlight on the nose, I think I could make a little bit stronger. You see right there? not too strong. And as you can see, the overall effect of the skin is more of a matte look, not a greasy, shiny look. Now, where the temple is, right there, that is a bit cooler and helps to establish the side plane. And then right here, there's a darker tone right above the eye, right there, like that. These are additional variations of color and tone that help to further add more variation of color and tone to the face color to make it more interesting. And usually the neck is a bit redder than the face. Redder color down here on the neck, something like this here. Now, there's a lot of things to learn about painting heads, and I can't go into all of that here in one video. The only way you're going to learn to get really good at this sort of thing is by having more knowledge of what it is exactly that makes a great painting of a face. The more knowledge you have, the better your painting of a face is going to be. And you can't get all that knowledge from watching one free video. Also, there's more of a saturated red right here where the Terminator is. See right there? And that's because the skin is translucent and the light is penetrating into that skin, warming up the shadow and the shadow's edge right there. Now I'm adding the finishing touches here. The nose, for example, has a slight tinge of red, which I just added. Then around the eyes, there is a slight tinge of a reddish color. This very subtle modeling, very soft, and I'm going to add a darker tone right there where the crease of the eye is, and right there as well on the other side. Can't go too dark on it though. It's important that you don't overdo things.
Hi, one from each of our roles. Everyone, I'm John DeShazer, and I'm the design director on Evercore Heroes. And today we have a really cool thing to show: 3 new heroes. Fulfills all the path to, which the forms, and every time she does.
Meet Dave, an interesting little human with a precarious blue hole. His attention, aim, and at the top of the food. I suppose even the most sets as the patrons.
My name is Cherry. I was built to entertain my creator. They will pay for what they did to her.
What's up, everybody? This is IGN Summer of Gaming. Your talents.
From that angle of how you play a game versus how you make a game.
Well, let's take a look at our first game. This is Gestalt Steam and Cinder, a 2D Metroidvania with what's sort of the
era, some old world technology that's doing her in this
Square Enix.
Like I think of that PlayStation pick up and play and destroy enemies. There is a narrative that is intertwined throughout.
Symphony of the Night occurred to me when I first saw it, but also maybe Mega Man X.
A little
Any of
bit,
that in there, too?
a little bit for sure. Mega Man X is one of my favorite games of all time,
Yeah.
so that's definitely what drew me to it as well. But definitely Symphony of the Night is kind of our starting basis for the game.
Very cool. All right, up next, a bright and colorful, fast-paced, roguelike action platformer. Gerard, what can you tell us about Elsie?
Whew, Elsie is so fun. I'd say that game is more closely to Mega Man X than Gestalt. Elsie, you play as our character Elsie. She is this android who's set to essentially restore Earth from these like ancient beings that have been retired. And so each atmosphere and stage is based off of a different element. So a fire stage, an ice stage, a wind stage, a lightning stage. But the whole thing is it's a Mega Man X roguelike aesthetic essentially. The cool thing that makes the game so unique to me is the parry system that's in it. It's very much similar to that of Gears of War. And how you use the parry mechanic is like you would reload when you're reloading a gun in Gears of War. And if you hit that parry system, you create an AoE blast that kind of neutralizes the enemies around you, as well as you get stamina back to you. So as you're shooting your guns and you're using your special weapons, the more you dodge and weave between enemies and parry correctly, the more the requirement of strength comes back to you. And it kind of leans into this whole idea of kinetic energy. You're constantly dashing through enemies, shooting them with weapons, and it's electric. The whole thing is about movement. Me to it when I simply...
Is that right?
Yes, it helps you as you kind of dash your
born on the shoulders of a great heart. For the miracle was about to give birth to a child. A symbol in which all our faiths, pleas, and hopes might be united in communion.
This endless waiting has been my penance.
Hear the battle call, cities rise and empires fall, but it's a war worth fighting. We're taking up our arms, hold the line uphill we charge, and we keep on fighting. It's a war worth the fight.
This is not.
Why can't I? Our guiding star has shattered. Its shards scattered across the world. An ancient evil searches for these lost fragments, destroying any.
I'll tell you a tale. Horror inside.
So something like that maybe. And then I'm going to pick up the lighter color over here on the right side and add it right there, right above the upper lip on the other side like that. And a slightly lighter highlight on the chin right there. Very subtle. Then at the bottom of the chin, you can add a bit more of the darker tone. Adjustments here and there need to be made. You're never going to get it perfect immediately. It doesn't work that way. You have to build up, as I've shown you here, to the finish. You find all sorts of things that need to be changed and corrected as you work on the painting. And for example, the shadow underneath her chin and jaw needs to be darkened. And the edge needs to be a bit harder. Don't have all soft edges everywhere, the same softness. There needs to be a variety of edges, some harder, some softer, some firmer, some lost. So something like this. I can't spend too much time on this. If this was going to be a finished painting, I would do some more things on it and be more careful. I could add a slight suggestion of a cleft right there on the chin. Sometimes a cleft can be added, but in a very subtle way. So it's not very noticeable. So there's a bit harder edge now here at the jaw and chin. And at the bottom right there, that's a harder edge. Cast shadows have harder edges to them. So the light source is a bit from the side and it's further up, somewhere around there. Therefore, as I mentioned earlier, this shadow occurs the way it does here underneath the chin and jawline like this. Also, the ears can be made a bit redder. Now, one thing I need to do over here with the shadow is this part of the shadow is going to be darker. And why is that? Well, because this part of the shadow receives some reflected light. This doesn't. Therefore, this part is darker, and then it gets progressively lighter as it moves over like this, and that's where the reflected light or bounce light occurs. So let me just change the hardness of the brush to a soft brush, blend that dark tone into the lighter tone, and then this part right there needs to be made softer. So what I could do is pick up this color over here, let's see, and add that to the jawline, thereby softening that edge. So I think that's better. So this is where knowledge comes in. This is the kind of knowledge you need. And if you go into art school and they're not teaching you these things, then you're going to the wrong art school. Ask for your money back. This is the kind of knowledge that will make all the difference between you being able to paint really great pictures or bad pictures. It's all about knowledge and skill. Skill you get when you just do a lot of practice work. You get better and better at drawing and painting when you do that. But it's not enough to just draw and paint. You also need knowledge. You need to apply that knowledge to your practice work. There are a few more things that I could do, such as, for example, add a more reddish color right here where the transition between the light and the shadow side of the face occurs. And also add more hair. So something like this maybe. And the hair will act as a frame for her face, helping to draw attention to her face. So something like this, and also the hair will go over the ears. And the eyes need to be brought in a little bit more, so there's more space between the outside corner of the eye and the side of the face here, as well as on the other side. I also want to make some changes to the lips. I think they should be a little bit wider and not quite as full looking, and the skin color is still a little too saturated. It needs to be grayed down even more, so I'll do that, and then I'll show you what it looks like after I've made those changes. So I went ahead and reduced the intensity of the skin color, and I think now it's more like the kind of skin color that John Wickham would paint. Now, of course, my painting doesn't really do justice to his great skill that he had in painting faces, but I hope to have come close enough for you to understand just how he painted these beautiful women, what he did. And if you also try to do what I showed you in this video when painting beautiful women, I think you're going to find that your paintings of women are going to be much more beautiful looking.
In this beautiful painting of a head that Whitcomb did, you can see the colors that he used for skin, and he didn't always use the same colors for every skin color. Sometimes the skin color would lean a bit more in the direction of yellow-orange, other times more orange-like. The skin color is variations of red and yellow. Then he used white to add to those variations. Sometimes he would even add black. And other times he would use a complementary color or a near complementary color to gray and cool and reduce the saturation of a color. And here you see a scale of warm colors. The color that is considered the warmest is an orange color. Then a color that's a bit cooler than an orange is a red-orange. And then the color that is even cooler than a red-orange is a red. But if you need a color to look even warmer than an orange, you could add some yellow to it to get more of a yellow-orange color. since yellow is the color that is associated with warm sunlight, adding yellow can warm up a color. To cool a color, you add blue. And that's what he did. What he would do is he would mix up a batch of a basic color, like I mentioned earlier, and in this case, that batch of color is a color that's yellow, but it leans or shifts slightly in the direction of yellow-orange. I'm going to select a yellow here so you can see the difference. See, that looks more yellow than the other color. So the other color leans a bit in the direction of yellow-orange. So once he had his basic color, his base color, he needed to create variations, and he would do that, let's say, by adding white to that basic color. That would reduce the intensity of that color somewhat, but he wouldn't add too much white, because by adding a lot of white, then the color begins to look chalky. So to reduce a color in its intensity more and to cool it a bit, but not to cool it too much and not to gray it too much, to keep more of a clean looking color and a richer looking color, instead of adding a complementary color, he would add a near complementary color. So the complementary color to yellow-orange is blue-violet, but the near complement is violet or blue-green. So in this case, I'm going to add violet, the near complement, and you need to add the same value. So that's what I'm doing now, and then I'll mix it right in there with that color, and it's reduced the saturation somewhat, cooled it a bit, and I'm going to pick up that color and then add it over here to see how close I got to what he has. But it's not desaturated enough, it's not grayed enough, so therefore I need to add a bit more of the violet color. Let's see, maybe something like this, not too much. So getting the right mixture can be tricky. You got to practice your color mixing. Let's see what that looks like. And that's closer. But it's still a little bit too warm. So I add a bit more of the violet. And you can see just how gray the skin color is in the light. That's better. And I'll go with that. And I'll keep it up there. Then the halftones on a face are a bit cooler, and usually they're also a bit more saturated than the color in the light. So that means the halftones will be an orange color. So I'm going to add red to the basic mixture here and turn that into more of an orange color, like this. And then I'm going to add the complement, which is blue. And that'll gray it a bit, cool it down a bit. Let's see what that looks like. And it needs to be cooled down a bit more, so I add a bit more of the blue. And that's close enough. For the halftone, the transitional color between the light and the shadow, and then for the shadow, to cool that down more, red is added, and more red is added to that basic mixture, which will cool it down. Remember, red is cooler than orange, or red-orange. But in this case, it's not going to be red. It's going to be more of a red-orange. Red would cool it too much. And the complement to red-orange is blue-green, so I'm going to add some blue-green. Maybe something like this. Red-orange, a bit more red, and a bit more blue-green. Now, I'm doing this really quick and rough, so it's not going to be 100% accurate here. Maybe something like that. That looks cooler. I'm going to add that to the shadow, and it actually needs to be reduced in saturation even more. Let's see what that looks like. And that's closer to what he's got there. But it needs to be warmed up just a little bit. Maybe something like that. Shouldn't look too cold. Let's see what that looks like. And actually, it should be a bit warmer. So I add a little bit more of the warmer color here, like this. See, this kind of mixing can take a while to do. And let's see what that looks like. Cool it down just a little bit. Now, what about the halftone of the cheek color that you see there? I'm going to pick that up, and that's actually this color. Looks like an orange, shifting slightly in the direction of red-orange. So I'm going to pick that up. Move the little color selector into the corner. Add the color over here. See, it's a bit more of a red-orange that he's using for the cheek color. So for the cheek color, I'm going to start out with the basic color here, and then he adds red to that basic mixture, which results in somewhat of a red-orange color. Then, instead of using a complement to gray it, which is the blue-green, I'm going to use green. I don't want to gray it too much. Add a little bit more of the red. See what that looks like. It's not cool enough. It's not gray enough. So you need to make these kind of small changes to get the right mixture. And I think that's better. Warm cheek color. Again, it needs to be grayed a bit more. So this could go on and on until you get the right color. That's better. I think I'm going to go with that. So here's a quick lesson on how he mixed his colors. And now I want to show you an example of the kind of rough sketches that John Whitcomb would make. And here's an example of that. He would work out his composition and value pattern and color scheme with these kind of rough sketches. So this sketch was the basis for the finished painting, which is this. And what a magnificent looking painting this is. He had such a stylish style, a style that oozed glamour. No one could do it like he did. Even to this day, there's no one that can paint these kind of pictures that have his style, that can put the kind of glamour into the illustrations like he was able to. There will always be just one John Whitcomb. Even the many imitators that he had couldn't paint like him because they weren't him. That's why don't try to imitate other artists. You'll always just be a poor imitation of the real thing. Be yourself. Express your uniqueness through your art. That's what Whitcomb did. To paint these characters here, he had to photograph models. He didn't make this stuff up from imagination, like some students might think. No, that's not the way this is done. In those days, you had to photograph models. You worked from photos or from real life, which was what he did. And here's an example of the photo that he took for this illustration. Sorry, I can't get it any sharper than this. But here you can see how close he kept to the photo. That's why his illustrations look so realistic, because they were based on photos. But of course what he did was he enhanced reality. And as an illustrator, that's what you need to do. Otherwise, he could have just used the photo as is and dispense painting an illustration. But the photo looks pale in comparison to a painting. The photo doesn't give the kind of more idealized image that people like to see. And that's what helps sell the product. And in this case, the product was a story. So seeing this kind of illustration, people would want to read the story. Now there's more to the illustration on the left side, but I wasn't able to locate that illustration in color, but I do have the black and white version that appears in his book, which is this here. So you can see that he added that water fountain there to dominate the entire composition in size. And that's where the text for the story was placed. Now here's part of a page from his textbook. And at the top here, you can see some of the rough sketches that he did for this illustration, and the one on the right there I already showed you, but let me enlarge these two. You can see how rough he makes these sketches. While they're rough, they're not very rough so that you can no longer tell what's going on. You can tell what's going on in these sketches. And this is what he would show to the art director. And then the art director would pick one of these for him to turn into finished art. And sometimes they would ask him to make changes, which he made. Let me show you another rough black and white sketch that he did. But actually, he did these in color. But I'm showing you them in black and white because that's how they appear in his textbook. All his illustrations in the textbook are in black and white. And these illustrators like Al Parker or John Whitcomb or Austin Briggs, when they did a story illustration for a magazine, they would many times leave space for where the text occurs and the title of the story. So you see the title of the story there, and then of course here he leaves space for the text of the story to be put into. Personally, I don't like this when they did this because it takes